Hello and welcome to Westminster as the Conservative Party prepares to announce its new leader. Well, in 1 hour's time, the party will take its first step towards rebuilding after July's devastating election defeat. Will it be the bookies' favourite Kemi Badenoch, the former business secretary, who would become the first ever black leader of a major UK party? Or could the former immigration minister Robert Jenrick upset the odds as the Conservatives look to take the fight to Labour?
I'm with Tory members in Northamptonshire, gauging reaction and finding out what they want from their new leader.
We'll bring you all the build-up to that result with our panel and also our top political team. It's Saturday, I'm Sophie Ridge live from Westminster, and this is a Politics Hub Conservative Leadership Special. Hello, good morning from Westminster, where in just 1 hour's time, the new leader of the Conservative Party will be announced 4 entire months on from its historic and devastating election defeat. Well, the job of rebuilding the party as leader of the opposition will fall to either Kemi Badenoch, the former business secretary, or the former immigration minister, Robert Jenrick. And whoever wins faces the prospect of years of hard grind on the opposition benches. But the job is perhaps not entirely without hope. An opinion poll, and of course it is just one poll, last night put the Conservatives ahead of Labour for the first time since the election, in the aftermath of a budget that raised taxes by £40 billion, and which of course continues to provoke anger from care homes and farmers this morning. Measures only necessary because of the toxic economic legacy left them, say Labour. But after an opening period in government beset by difficulties, the new Conservative leader will be hoping that Keir Starmer's massive majority is at least part illusion, and that an astonishing turnaround at the next election is something more than just wishful thinking. Well, we're going to take an in-depth look at both candidates in the next hour. Polling shows many people don't really know what to think of them yet. We'll try and change that, and also get the thoughts of our panel too. But first, here's our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen, with a look at what's at stake.
The final two don't have long to wait until one is crowned the next Conservative leader. Robert Jenrick, the former immigration minister, who's put that issue at the centre of his campaign, and Kemi Badenoch, the former trade secretary, who says she'll tell her party hard truths.
It's been a long contest. Have we learned a lot about the two final candidates?
Much less than I think we should have. The problem with this contest is the party decided to go really long, but at the same time they confined the membership vote, when we only knew the final two, to just 3 weeks. And ballots dropped halfway through that process. So that meant we had months and months with loads of candidates in the race, but also that was the MP round. You'd think the MPs would have had a chance to get to know these people already. And then the actual choice that members are going to be making, barely any time to scrutinise that.
After 14 years in government under 5 prime ministers,
that work begins immediately.
Together, we can ride out the storm.
No ifs or buts.
We face a time of great national change.
We can provide that strong and stable government.
It's not since David Cameron that the party has elected a leader to go into opposition. How should they rebuild after catastrophic defeat?
So the first thing is to think about, why we lost. The second thing is, what do we have to say? And then they need to be agile, they need to be reactive, but pick their fights, not fight over everything. And also get out and about. Now, when you're Prime Minister, you can't get out and about as much as you like. You're leader of the opposition. With David Cameron, he started these Cameron Directs, which sound very old-fashioned now. We thought it was very trendy to have a podcast and all this sort of thing.
Graham Brady was elected in 1997.
There is a huge difference between now and 1997. The Blair government remained very popular, and Tony Blair personally remained very popular through that whole parliament and beyond. And in 100 days or so, Keir Starmer has already fallen way behind that. So I think we've got a great opportunity. I don't think we're up against an insuperable challenge, but it's a big challenge.
For years, the Conservative Party's battles and divisions have dominated the headlines. With a long road to the next election, the challenge for this leader may be getting noticed at all. Tamara Cohen, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, our political editor, Beth Rigby, is shortly going to hot-foot it to the venue to bring us that result. Have you, under the desk?
I actually have.
She actually has, I just checked. But before that, she is here with us to chat through what this is all about. Look, some people might be thinking, who on earth cares about this? The Conservatives are going to be out of power for ages. They had a historic loss. But actually, it does matter, doesn't it?
Of course it matters. And the leader of the opposition is a massive job, not just to hold the government to account, but there is obviously opportunity. But when you set it in the context of the mountain to climb, that was actually Robert Jenrick's words, I think, last week, and what Keir Starmer talked about when he became leader of the opposition for the Labour Party. Labour have the second largest Labour majority ever. The Tories lost 251 seats in the last general election, going from 365 to just 121. It was their worst performance at the polls since the mid-19th century, for nearly 200 years. So the scale of the defeat is enormous. And so this is going to be a really, really hard job for either Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick. It's a depleted party, and it's not just that, Sophie. Look at Reform picking up 4 million votes, beating the Tories in so many seats where the Conservative vote split and Labour went through the middle. And then on the other side of it, look at Ed Davey and the Lib Dems, 3.5 million votes, taking 72 seats. It's a party being squeezed by both sides. But, you know, as you referred to in the introduction there is some hope. There was a poll out last night, one poll, but it put the Tories in lead of Labour by just 1 percentage point, or 29% of the vote share versus 28% for Labour. But it's the first time in 3 years that the Conservatives have edged ahead of the Labour Party. So there is something there in this budget that has been ill-received, and a Labour Party that won a massive majority but on a vote share that was around the level of 2019 when they lost the general election. So there's lots to go for. I think the big question in the Conservative Party is whether ultimately either of these two leaders have got what it takes. And there is an active discussion already amongst Conservative MPs and supporters about whether Kemi Badenoch or Rob Jenrick actually lead the party into the next election, or they need to change leader again.
I did notice James Cleverly saying he wasn't going to serve on either of their front benches. That, to me, was straight away, I was like, oh, that's a guy with an eye on the next contest.
Yeah,
right?
He said he's going to go to the back benches. I mean, Ruth Davidson, who backed James Cleverly in the leadership race, she told us on our Electoral Dysfunction podcast this week, she said she really found the choice difficult. She voted for Rob Jenrick, but she did so because she doesn't think that he's necessarily going to lead. Whoever wins will lead the party into the next general election.
So we've got just under an hour until the results, and I don't know about you, Beth, but I've kind of fluctuated on who I thought was going to win this contest. It kind of, when it got to the final two, I was like, oh, it's going to be Kemi Badenoch. She's the bookies' favourite. She hasn't made any big missteps yet. But I feel like it could be more unpredictable than we think. I mean, the membership numbers are so hard to poll or get a real sense of.
Yes, I mean, look, Kemi Badenoch is the favourite. She had a few stumbles in this leadership race, not least at party conference, where she gave a couple of interviews which landed very badly and made people feel nervous about whether or not she was a safe pair of hands in terms of how she communicates. She did very well in a GB News debate, and she got some momentum again. But you're right, Sophie. I was speaking to a shadow cabinet minister the other day, and they said it's just very unpredictable. Kemi Badenoch has the support, if you like, of London and the South East and maybe the younger cohort of Conservative voters. But Robert Jenrick is from the West Midlands. He's made a big play of that. His supporters tell me that he has more support in the towns across the country, in the West Mids, up into the north of England. And it is a small electorate and it's unpredictable. So, there's been lots of polling, but is it capturing some of the groups of... Is it weighted towards Kemi Badenoch? It's a big unknown. I think there's also a question about turnout. In 2022, Liz Truss won 57% of the vote. She had just over 80,000 votes. Rishi Sunak won 42% with 60,000 votes. So that's a turnout of about 140,000 party members. So I'll be looking to see today about the turnout, because there's also a suspicion that some people don't like either choice. They're both on the right of the party, these candidates, and maybe some Conservative members don't vote at all. So, Kemi is the one I think people are expecting to come out, but I'm always ready for a shock in politics.
Yeah. Don't leave this. Don't leave the room, because we don't know who's going to win. We really don't.
Leave the room to get there.
Apart from Beth, you are allowed.
If you're at home, don't leave your TV set.
Beth, thank you very much indeed. Beth Rupert, our political editor. Well, as Beth was saying, this is a really important day. Whoever becomes leader of the opposition really matters. They're two candidates from the right of the party, but they're very different in terms of temperament and character. So there could be two very different paths that the Conservative Party goes down. And of course, it's a big day for members as well. A chance for them to really have a say on the future of their party and potentially the future of the country as well. Our political correspondent Rob Powell is in Kettering for us today, a seat which used to be Conservative but is now Labour, and he's in a group. He's in the pub, I should say, with a group of Conservative Party members. Nice and early for you, Rob.
Yeah, a decent turnout for this time of the morning in the pub, Sophie. Kettering, as you say, has bounced between the two main parties over the years. It was Conservative held, though, since 2005, but it was lost on a pretty hefty swing in July, a 4,000 majority the Labour MP here has. Speaking to members this morning, it's probably broadly in line in terms of expectations. Most people, I think, seem to think that Kemi Badenoch might take it, but there's a difference of opinion of which way the party should go now. Some disappointment that James Cleverly wasn't in the final two as well. Well, let's have a chat to the chairman of the Conservative Association here in Kettering, Councillor Mark Rowley. First of all, I guess for people that don't know the area, can you set the scene a little bit, politically anyway, explain a little bit what happened, I guess, at the general election and why it went wrong around here?
Yeah, so the area's predominantly a Conservative area. In the unitary elections, we had an overwhelming support from our residents. In the election itself, it was a hard-fought fight, but with the national picture, it was a hard struggle to win. We had strong candidates from Reform and the Green Party who took votes away from the Conservatives as well, which allowed Labour to, with Rosie, to get in.
So I guess it's hard to sort of generalise, but generally what do you think people that were turned off the Conservatives last time, what were you picking up on the doorstep that what they might want now in a leader?
Consistency. They were sick of the infighting in Parliament. They were sick of the change of MPs, of Prime Ministers so much. So they just want some consistency, no infighting, and getting on and doing the job.
And which of the two candidates do you think could bring that?
I would have hoped that James Cleverly was in the final two, but he's not. So I'm hoping that Robert will bring that forward.
And just very quickly, what do you think is going to happen?
I hope that Robert wins. I was hoping that James would be his deputy, as he's advertised, but James announced him last night that he's going to be a backbencher. It's a bit disappointing. I think it would have been a good combination with those two.
Thank you so much, Councillor. Thank you. Yeah, some disappointment here, I think, at how the MP rounds did turn out, that there maybe wasn't a sort of more centrist choice on the ticket. As I say, a lot of people saying they think that Kemi Badenoch will probably come through, but it's certainly not a uniform view here.
Rob, thank you very much indeed. We'll be going back to Rob Powell throughout the day and getting the reaction of the all-important Conservative Party members to the result. Thanks, Rob. Right, we can bring in our panel for today. We're also, I should say, joined by Sam Coates, our Deputy Political Editor, not part of the panel, but here to provide his kind of expert commentary throughout the morning as well. We're also joined by the Conservative MP Andrew Bowie, who is supporting Kemi Badenoch, and we're also joined as well by Neil O'Brien down the line, who is backing Robert Jenrick today. Great to have you both with us today. Right, Neil, let's talk to you first, shall we? How confident are you feeling about the result?
I don't know what the result's going to be. I think that Robert's run a really good and incredibly energetic campaign. I mean, in fairness, both of them have. They're both basically like superhuman to have kept up this momentum and the sheer number of visits that they've done around the country over the last couple of months. So, look, I think they're both brilliant candidates. I hope that Robert wins, but I think they're both excellent. From my point of view, it was my kind of dream final, really, because I think they're both really, really good. So, look, I hope the best man wins, but I think both of them will be excellent. So, I'm very excited to find out what's going to happen.
Neil, I interviewed Robert Jenrick this week, and I couldn't help noticing that he was making a couple of digs at Kemi Badenoch throughout the interview, talking about people who didn't put policies forward as having no substance, for example. Do you think it's going to be a hard task for either of them to kind of unite the party or, even work together after the results announced?
No, I think that we will come together quite quickly as well after the result. The differences of policy, look, there are differences of substance, there are important differences. You have a lot of energy in a leadership contest, naturally enough. But the truth is that we all have roughly the same critique of this Labour government. I think we're all appalled by the kind of economic doom loop that Rachel Reeves is setting up of much higher taxes, spending on all kinds of very questionable things, and terrible decisions that are hammering our potential for growth. For example, in Andrew's area, the decision to effectively close down North Sea oil production is just a disaster for the northeast of Scotland. So I think we're pretty united in our critique of Labour, and I think you'll find that we come together pretty quickly after the result is announced. Whoever the next leader is, we'll all get in behind them, I'm sure. OK, well, we'll find out how easy that is, of course, in the kind of weeks ahead. Andrew, let's talk to you now. Neil was just saying there that it's quite hard to call. Do you think it looks close? I mean, we've had lots of talk about turnout being quite low, Conservative members being hard to poll as well.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what the turnout is and none of us know what the result is. So it's very difficult for any of us really to predict what might happen in the next 45 minutes, and never underestimate the Conservative Party's ability to surprise. We've seen that over the past few weeks, but it's been a really good race, actually. When you compare it to leadership elections in the recent past, there has been no real acrimony between any of the candidates, even back to when we had 6 candidates in the race. They have gone around the country, been a really positive campaign. The energy shown by every single candidate who took it upon themselves to stand for leader has been quite incredible. And here we are today.
Hang on, I have to come in there. I'm not sure if that's really true. I mean, I've already spoken to Neil about Robert Jenrick's comments. I mean, Kemi Badenoch wrote a whole piece in the Daily Telegraph saying she'd never have to resign with the whiff of impropriety. I mean, that was pretty clear she was talking about Robert Jenrick.
Yeah, but I think when you compare it to leadership campaigns in the recent past, be that the Liz Truss Rishi Sunak campaign or indeed campaigns before that, this campaign stands out, actually, for the respect being shown from all sides to each of the candidates who were running. And I think that's been a very good thing, stands the party in good stead and shows that we can come together when we need to. And we are going to need to in the face of what is a very large Labour majority, but one that is squandering all the public support that they had just a few short months ago with some of the decisions that they've taken.
OK, thanks both. Have a lot from both Neil and Andrew throughout the day as well. But let's just chat quickly to Sam Coates, shall we, our Deputy Political Editor. I find it interesting because everyone always talks about Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick as being on the right of the party. But it feels to me like they're two quite different politicians who could end up taking the Conservative Party in quite different directions if they win. Do you think that's right?
I think this contest is a funny one. In the end, Robert Jenrick staked out some policy positions, particularly on immigration, leaving the European Convention on Human Rights. Kemi Badenoch did not. She basically went for a pitch on ideology and moving the country to the right. And actually, I tend to agree slightly more with Neil O'Brien, who said that there aren't huge differences between the two. The bottom line, I think, is that this last phase of the leadership contest has been a bit more a choice between two personalities rather than two different big directions for the Conservative Party. Undoubtedly, the choice that will be made in 45 minutes' time will put the party on a slightly different path. But I'm not sure that there was a great divide, as if there had been if James Cleverly had been up against Kemi or Robert. And even the differences in personality have not been amped up as much as they could do. It's been more coded swipes than all-out kind of slugging, which of the sort that we saw when the party was in power. So I think it's been a curious contest and maybe not one that was as big and as cathartic, arguably, as the party needed to have, given the scale of the election defeat. Interesting, and quite hard to call. I guess you're not making any predictions for me, Sam. Well, I sat here and said that it was only a question of who would be with James Cleverly in the final round the last time we were sitting here together, and I ended up with egg on my face. So, no, I'm not giving you a prediction right now. That's very fair. That's absolutely fair. Sam, thank you very much indeed. Sam Coates there. Right, let's take a moment, shall we, now, to look at each of the candidates in a little bit more detail. We're going to start with Kemi Badenoch. My colleague Ali Fortescue has been taking a look back at her career.
Kemi, why is it that you're the only one that's not going to talk to the media? Thank you so much for the interview.
She's never been a conventional politician.
Taking on big names from the start, hers was a campaign not shy of a fight.
I don't wish ill of her, I just wish her to shut up.
No, I will not shut up.
Now the battle for the Tory party is almost over.
Who do I want alongside me? Somebody who shies away from a fight or somebody who I have to occasionally restrain? I'll take the restraint.
Do you occasionally have to restrain her?
No, but I'm saying if that's your choice, I want somebody that really knows that they have to make the case and do it boldly.
Kemi Badenoch's path to politics was not an ordinary one. The daughter of a GP and a professor, she was born in Wimbledon but grew up in Nigeria, in West Africa. At 16, her father saved for the airfare that would take her back to the UK.
I worked at McDonald's when I was 16, but it wasn't working at McDonald's that made me working class.
Her claim that flipping burgers made her working class was ridiculed, but it was at that time, studying at Sussex University, that Kemi Badenoch's politics took shape, leading her to the Tory party in her early 20s.
People of this beautiful constituency.
And then Parliament in her 30s, where she quickly attracted attention.
As Woody Allen said about sex, if it's not messy, you're not doing it right.
I remember the first time that she had become a minister and was at the dispatch box, and it was a really head-turning moment. She appeared to speak with great clarity, this sort of almost from-the-heart conviction. She has a reputation of being a bit gruff, sometimes grumpy, sometimes rude to colleagues. You can't do that if you are the leader. You need to bring colleagues along with you.
Do you think that reputation's fair?
It is her style is to be very direct, and some people won't like that.
Self-proclaimed anti-woke, many first noticed her introducing Theresa May's conference speech.
Me, Kemi, a girl from Nigeria.
Are we heading for a coronavirus crash, Chancellor?
And under Boris Johnson, she rose to the Treasury. And then the Cabinet as International Trade Secretary.
It's time to tell the truth.
And when the race came to replace Liz Truss, she beat the odds and finished fourth.
Are you pleased with your new job, Kemi Badenoch?
Badenoch.
Never afraid to speak her mind, never far from a headline.
I was...
Order. Who do you think you're speaking to, Secretary of State?
On policy, she hasn't given much away. Even so, it was a characteristically eventful leadership campaign.
I think maternity pay is a good thing. I don't think it's excessive.
Accused of being gaffe-prone, once Kemi Badenoch made it to the membership, she was a firm favourite.
Some people say, I like a fight. I can't imagine where they got that idea.
She would make history as the first black woman to lead the Conservatives, a remarkable journey that could today take her to the top of the party. Ali Fortescue, Sky News, Westminster.
Ali Fortescue there looking at Kemi Badenoch, who in just under an hour's time could be the next leader of the opposition. Right, let's go once again, shall we, to Kettering, where Rob Powell is in the pub with some Conservative Party members. Rob, what do the guys with you make about the contest then?
Yeah, I think the general view here, out of people I've spoken to, is that probably Kemi Badenoch is going to come out on top. But let's see what the members here think about the prospect of that and what they think about Kemi Badenoch as well. So, what do you make of the prospect of Kemi Badenoch winning? Would that be a good thing?
That would be a good thing, because she was out of my top two for a choice anyway.
Okay. What do you think? What would you look for in her? What makes her appeal to you?
Her persona, basically, the way she comes across. Yeah, I think she's very good. I think she'd be very good for the party.
Now, you were pretty happy with both of the candidates, right? Do you mind asking who you voted for?
I voted for the one who's likely to lose.
And that is? OK, why?
More detailed policies on things like withdrawing from the HCR against the European Court of Human Rights.
And what do you make of Kemi Badenoch then? What do you think she would excel at?
I've always been an admirer. She's a brilliant communicator.
Why didn't you vote for her?
Because she didn't commit to the policies I wanted, but I think she'll follow them anyway.
You think was ECHR pretty...
One of the important things, one of them.
OK. Now, you're a big Kemi supporter, aren't you?
Kemi supporter, yeah.
Why?
I think she's more dynamic than Jenrick. She's certainly to the right of the party, which is where we need to move as a party. And she's young and dynamic, so
I guess
she's got everything going for her.
Some discussion about, she can be quite punchy, which I guess a lot of members see as a good thing. some other people might see it as not necessarily
She could do with being a bit more rounded, but overall, I think she's by far the best candidate. And I was, from the start, I was going to vote Kemi if she got to the last two.
She strikes me as a very, very principled politician. She's thought a lot about her beliefs. Do you think that that is something that can hold up under the stress and strains of opposition there? Haven't you got to compromise, bring people together?
There is a certain element of compromise, but I think the party is too centrist as we currently stand, and I don't think that's a good thing. You alienate your core voters, which is not what you want to do as a party, which in my opinion is why we lost the last election. So we need to appeal to the core Conservative voters, and frankly the one nation conservatism doesn't work.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I don't mind which one gets in. I voted for Robert, but we definitely need to move. We have to gain the trust again. If we can't gain the trust of the people, then I don't.
And if it is to be Kemi Badenoch, what kind of people would you like to see around her in terms of shadow cabinet? What kind of approach? Do you think it should be broad church, or does it have to be a very particular flavour of conservatism?
I think we need to move away from the centre and go more to the right, just basically because of the immigration. We have to stop immigration. It's costing a fortune. And at present, we can't do that because we're in the EHCR. That was brought in by Tony Blair as part of British law. We have to get out of the EHCR, change the law before we can do anything, and that's going to take time.
So would you like to see Kemi Badenoch go further when it came to the Convention on Human Rights?
I'd like to, but I don't think she'll be able to.
Well, Sophie, a mix of views here, a mix of people that voted for both of the candidates, but I get a sense that actually whoever won, people would be fairly happy.
Yeah, you do get that impression, don't you, Rob? Good to see everyone's on the coffees at this time in the morning in the pub as well. Very responsible drinking there. I wonder if that will change as the day goes on. Rob, thanks very much indeed. We'll be going back to Rob Powell and the Conservative members he's speaking to throughout the day, but we can talk to our panel once again. Andrew Bowie, down the line, Neil O'Brien, and also we're joined by Anita Boateng as well. Anita, let's chat to you first, shall we? What do you make of the contest in the final two?
I think that it's been a really fascinating contest, actually, in some ways, because the final two candidates aren't necessarily, when it comes to really kind of detailed policy issues, kind of slugging it out. It's been much more of a contest of the type of person that you want to lead the Conservative Party. And they've had kind of markedly different approaches. And in some ways, it's quite refreshing, I think, from the candidates and from the elections and leadership contests we've had in recent times, where it's been much more of a sort of, well, my opponent thinks this and I don't think that's quite the right thing, with a lot of the commentariat trying to grapple with where to position them on the kind of Tory spectrum, and it's a lot more of that kind of drama. I feel as though it's been a bit more of a kind of incisive question about the characters of both of them, which I think makes for and shows a sort of slightly different Conservative Party that's thinking about what they need to do quite differently.
You are, I guess, our kind of neutral on the panel, if you like. Is that because you can't work it out between the two of them? Is it because you just don't want to tell us? What is it?
No, I think that's a really good question. I think that I came to this feeling as though, because it wasn't a question about prime ministers, I think it's much more of a question of like where the Conservative Party wants to go. And through this contest, I still think there's quite a lot of questions about what that might mean. And so I've kind of wanted to kind of stay back and observe and see how these things play out, because I think they're actually, it probably reflects a lot of the positions of quite a lot of Conservatives in the country, if not the party membership, in thinking about where the Conservative Party and what it should look like over a period of 4 or 5 years. Essentially, there's no actual rush. They both want to do the right thing, which is to revive the party. And there's a lot that's going to change between now and the next general election, certainly.
Andrew, Anita was talking there about the kind of character differences between the two candidates. And the one thing that perhaps is one of the things that's the starkest difference between them is the way that they approach the media. Kemi Badenoch is pretty hard to pin down. You know, I'm not going to lie. You know, it felt that she was kind of reluctant to do some head-to-head debates. She has done more interviews in the last week, including with me, I should add. But she's done far less than Robert Jenrick, who, you know, is keen to do media all the time. Isn't that going to be a bit of a problem for her if she wants to be leader of the opposition?
No, I don't think so. I mean, running in a leadership campaign as the favourite as Kemi was is very different to the job of being actual leader of the opposition. So obviously those media interviews will come and she will be setting out a lot more policy as we move forward. But as Anita said, this is very different from the previous few leadership elections in that we are electing a leader of an opposition at least 4 years out from a general election. We are not electing a prime minister. So I think it was right that Kemi took the approach she did in setting out broad brushstrokes of where she wants the party to go ideologically rather than specific policies, which is the job of the new leader and their team to put together as we move towards that next election. As they do that, she will be much more available and open to media interviews, I'm sure, Sophie. She was this week.
I'm going to write that down. Thanks very much indeed. Right, let's bring in Neil O'Brien, shall we, backing Robert Jenrick in the contest. We've been having a bit of a debate this morning about how different the two candidates are, whether in policy terms or also in character terms. What's your own view on this? Do you think there are similarities, or do you think that there are actually quite different individuals with different visions of conservatism?
We are slightly different personalities, though I think the differences are sometimes overstated. I think all this stuff about how Kemi is abrasive and so on is hugely overstated. I think if she was a man, you probably wouldn't hear all that stuff. I mean, I think she's sort of reasonably up for a proper debate about ideas, but this idea that she's like super abrasive is not something I've ever encountered in all my dealings with her in the last 7 years. So I think that some of these things are really overstated because the media like to have really simple ideas of kind of politics and slightly Punch and Judy kind of picture things, but in reality I don't think it's as big a deal as all that. I think both of them are really good. I think Robert is very thoughtful, and if you would had this contest a few years back, you'd have probably assumed that he would have been the candidate of the kind of the left of the party. And he starts from a position of, I think, quite sensible, fairly centrist in a sense, positions on the NHS, economy and so on. But at the same time realises that we do have to deal with the immigration issue, which is one of the reasons, only one of the reasons, why we lost so much support at the last general election. And that is why he's been very clear that he wants to have a decisive position on that. And although a lot of policies we will have to make decisions on over a longer period, we can't know exactly what we might inherit from Labour, we don't know exactly what they're going to do. He's wanted to make some clear decisions on the migration issue right now, which is one of the reasons why I was supporting him, to have that kind of clarity right up front on that particular issue. But it's whoever wins going to be the case that we have to develop a whole new suite of policies over a kind of longer period of time, and that we can't know exactly where we'll be in a few years' time. So on lots of issues, we won't be able to be that definitive this year, next year, on exactly what we're going to offer the public at the next general election. And that will have to come closer to the time. But we do know, I think all of us realise, that we need a thorough root and branch overhaul of our party's policies. We did have a devastating general election defeat. We have to have some humility about that. We left with just 121 MPs. And although Labour are having a terrible start, we're now ahead in the polls, amazingly, because of the terrible decisions Keir Starmer's made in the first couple of months as Prime Minister, from the winter fuel payment to the disastrous budget. We've still got to have humility, and we've got to look at how we can fundamentally change, and so that we can deserve to be re-elected. It's not just about wanting to be re-elected. We've got to deserve it by recognising the things we got wrong as well as some of the things that we got right.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Neil O'Brien speaking to us there. Right, not long to go now. You're watching a Politics Hub Conservative Leadership Special. Coming up, we'll take a look at the career of Robert Jenrick and discuss whether he's got what it takes to be leader.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Trust in politics is at an all-time low. What's going wrong and can we fix it? It's from Liz. She wants to know, why is there still no sign of the Labour Party electing a woman as leader?
It's sort of embarrassing. You know, it takes a very strong man to be leader, but it takes an even stronger man to support a woman for leader.
If you want to be mean to politicians, like, crack on. The activists that go out and make elections happen, I kind of feel like just don't be horrible to them. Be polite to them in the same way that they're polite to you.
Keir Starmer has got us into government with a big majority. He was completely clear before the election that he wasn't going to be able to do the two-child benefit policy, but I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't an early thing that comes along.
I went up to Gordon Brown and said, hello? No, yes, where is it? I said, found all these Tory candidates breaking land. Let me see it. This is brilliant.
Hello, welcome back. Well, before the break, we were focusing on Kemi Badenoch. We can turn now to her opponent, Robert Jenrick, a man who's not shied away from the political spotlight over the last couple of years. Here's Ali Fortescue once again.
He's a man who's been on a political journey.
Thank you for your warm welcome since I arrived at the House.
From a fresh-faced centrist new MP a decade ago, an unflinchingly right-wing campaign that has nearly taken Robert Jenrick to the top of the Conservative Party.
Let's leave the ECHR and let's get this done. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Well, Jenrick is a more sort of studied individual who wants to get the detail right and to then make the case about it. And there are lots of prime ministers that are more like that than they are about the sort of, the sort of icons, really.
The son of a gas fitter, Robert Jenrick grew up in Wolverhampton. He's described his background as working class. He was just 16 years old when he joined the Conservative Party and met his wife, seen by many as a driving force behind his ambition, not long after when he worked as a lawyer. They have 3 daughters, one with the middle name Thatcher. And he's talked publicly about his image transformation, his use of the weight loss drug Ozempic.
Robert Edward Jenrick is duly elected for the Newark constituency.
On entering Parliament, he was described as a Cameroon, a middle-of-the-road, Remain-backing Tory.
I hope now that I can repay the faith and trust that the people of Newark have put in me.
At 38, he became the youngest member of Boris Johnson's cabinet.
Nice to see you.
His speedy rise, though, was marked by missteps.
Will you still support Boris Johnson's government?
As Housing Secretary, he was embroiled in a planning row involving a Tory donor, and criticism over a lockdown trip to his second home in Herefordshire. But Robert Jenrick remained in government.
Robert Jenrick.
In the spotlight as immigration minister.
We must not elevate the well-being of illegal migrants above those of the British people.
His shock resignation a defining blow to his one-time friend, Rishi Sunak.
Thanks very much.
Your resignation?
No, absolutely not. You have to act on principle in politics.
They were sort of almost thick as thieves at the time, Rishi and Robert Jenrick. It must have been tough, and it must have been tough on both of them. I realised it won't have been an easy decision to make.
Was it quite ruthless?
I was surprised when he did it. Yes, I think that's probably right, and I think he's shown some mettle since in being able to go from, somebody who, as I say, whose nickname was generic, into somebody who, created a real profile for himself.
It was in the Home Office that Robert Jenrick's views hardened, presenting himself as a man with a plan, with a hard line on immigration. He became a surprise early favourite in the race to lead the party.
Do you think you could be in the final 2 by accident?
Well, look, there are always horse trading in these things.
His campaign hasn't been without controversy.
Do you really think that the SAS are killing instead of capturing terrorists because of ECHR rules?
But in an extraordinary comeback for the man once dubbed Robert Jenrick, a political and ideological journey that could take him to the very top of the Tory party. Ali Fortescue, Sky News, Westminster.
2 absolutely great pen portraits there by Ali Fortescue, I have to say. But let's go once again, shall we, to Kettering, where Rob Powell is in the pub with some Conservative Party members, all on the coffee, I should add, at this time in the morning. Rob, how is everyone feeling about the fact we're now counting down to the big result?
Yeah, I think everyone feels it's been a long old contest and they sort of want to get it over and done with now a little bit. But let's have a chat predominantly about Robert Jenrick after Ali's report there with some of the members here. Now, we spoke to you in September, didn't we? My colleague Darren chatted to you.
Yes,
at the time, you quite liked the idea of Priti Patel.
I did, yes.
Which way did you go when she got knocked out then?
Well, I've voted for Robert. I've watched quite a few of the hustings and I came in favour of him, which probably won't go down very well with the CWO, but which I'm chair of. But,
I mean, he's been on a bit of a journey,
yes,
hasn't he, Robert Jenrick? Do you believe him, I guess, or do you think
I do believe him, yeah, I do, yeah.
What about you? Who did you vote
for? Well, I went for Robert in the end, but I was last minute. I think Kemi would really rattle the Labour Party and cause a few problems. But in the end, I thought we need a period of stability, so I thought Robert would be the calmer of the two candidates.
Okay. Do you think it's a difficulty, a weakness for him that he's been in so many governments recently that Labour would be able to hang that round his neck?
Well, if we were going to go for somebody that would attack the other parties, then I would have. That's why I was thinking about Kemi, because everybody is scared of her, including most of her own party. But I thought, Robert would be a calming influence, and I think after the last few years, with the blue on blue, all of the Conservatives' problems have been self-inflicted, and I just thought we need a little period of calm, regrouping. Then we can take on somebody who's more aggressive and will take us through to the next election victory. I don't think whoever is voted this time will actually be a PM for the future.
Interesting. Now, Robert Jenrick, I guess he resigned. He didn't have faith in the migration policy. Do you think that's is that a plus point in your book or a negative?
Yeah, it is actually, because I think he is strong. So Kemi is stronger. I've voted for Robert as well. I do think Kemi's good as well. So, it won't be a bad consolation prize if Robert doesn't win for me. But I do think it's a good thing because he is very strong about British values, which I think is super important, and securing our state. So, yes, he's been through things, and Labour are always going to attack that. Of course they are. They love to kind of, harp on about these things. But, we can see now it's gone both ways. So it's not as easy as they thought when they got into government. They very quickly had some of that themselves. So, that's just old school, what happens, and I'm not worried about that. So.
What are the plus points you see in Robert Jenrick? What are the kind of things that would make him a good leader, or maybe you don't think that?
I voted for Robert. So I think I like he's all about English and British identity and being strong on that, and I'm very strong about that. And actually, when I was in sixth form, there's 180 people in my year. I was the only Conservative, and everyone was always attacking me, and I was like, oh my gosh. But I think that we do need to have a strong English identity, and also I want to secure our borders, because I think that nobody complains to America about their strong borders and you have to get a green card, whereas everyone's like, oh, we're racist or whatever because we want to secure our borders. But I think that we need that. Do you
think Robert Jenrick could reach out to younger voters? You say you're the only person.
Yeah, I know.
Do you think Robert Jenrick could change that?
I'm not sure. I feel like actually 87% of people my age are Labour and left-wing, and I think that I feel like any leader is very difficult for them to change young people's views. Everyone's very set in their ways, especially when people are left-wing and young. They're impressionable. And, Keir Starmer's trying to change the voting age to 16, which I don't agree with, and things like that. And that's reaching out to young people.
You said to me about glue on the ceiling or something in the car about that.
I said, yeah, when we were all 16, we were flinging glue on the ceiling at school, and he wants people to be able to vote. I think it's ridiculous. So,
okay,
yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I have a business in Wales, and in Wales they're allowing 16-year-olds to vote, and they're trying to make it so that 14-year-olds can vote.
It's a slippery slope.
Now, I have grandchildren, and I can assure you, even at 16, I'd be debatable whether they're old enough and mature enough to do it. Definitely not a 14-year-old.
Well, Sophie, the debate raging here. Lots of views, lots of admiration for both candidates. Quite a few people that did actually vote for Robert Jenrick, though, so it could be a surprise.
Yeah, Rob, I'll be honest, I'm not calling it. I'm really not calling it today. It is way too unpredictable. Thank you very much indeed, Rob Powell there in Kettering. Now, this is the room where it is all going to happen in just 15 minutes or so time. You can see there the great and the good of the Conservative Party gathering in central London, ready to hear the results of the contest. The choreography is that the acting chair of the party is going to make a short speech at 11. He'll then hand over to Bob Blackman, the chair of the 1922 Committee of Backbenchers, to read out the result of that room. And then we'll get a speech from the new leader of the Conservative Party and the leader of the opposition. Who is that going to be? Well, we really don't have long now to find out. It's very unpredictable, I have to say. I mean, the bookies have had Kemi Badenoch as the favourite, but the Conservative Party love to spring a surprise. I am not putting my money anywhere this morning, I'm really not. And of course, it is a cohort of voters, Conservative Party members, that is pretty small and very difficult to poll, so that makes it even more unpredictable. You can see there the room gathering up. We're joined by our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. Look, this really matters who wins, but at the same time, I can't help thinking, after 97, I think it took 13 years and 4 leaders for the Conservatives to get back into power. So what chance would you give the person at the podium who wins making it to Prime Minister?
Oh, that's another one that I'm not going to call. but it actually, it's the right question for whoever steps up. And I think one of the most striking things about this contest has been what hasn't been discussed, what issues haven't been on the table. In fact, this leadership contest was fought over quite a narrow range of issues, the kind of issues that were obsessing the Tory party when they were still in government, primarily immigration. But where I think there's a massive job from whoever walks up as victor to that podium is over what on earth the Conservatives do about the economy. Look, I think that during Boris Johnson's tenure, really Boris Johnson broke the kind of economic lodestar of the Conservative Party. But at the end of the time in power, I wasn't sure whether he believed most of all in cutting the deficit, cutting taxes, money for levelling up, money for public services. You got mixed messages almost on a day-to-day basis. And I think knowing where the Tory party stands on the biggest thing for voters, the economy, is going to be an absolutely critical job in an environment where the Labour Party clearly wants to spend. Does the next Tory leader risk being cut? Or do they have to find a more nuanced message?
I'm going to take that. I'm going to put it straight to Andrew Bowie, because I'll be honest, I don't know where Kemi Badenoch stands on this. I mean, Robert Jenrick has basically given us his full manifesto. He's got all the policies out there. We kind of know where he stands on all sorts of issues, from NHS capital spending to leaving the ECHR. With Kemi Badenoch, I don't know, because she hasn't put those policies out there. What does she think about the economy?
Well, I think Sam's absolutely right. I think the economy will be a key question when we come to asking the British people to choose their next government. Whether or not the Labour Party has managed the economy well or not will be the question that many people are asking, and whether they feel better off or not. But Kemi has said that one of the biggest issues we had in that last election was that too few people knew what we stood for. We had presented to the British people a very confused message about where we stood in a whole host of issues, not least where our priorities were on the economy, where we spend party, where we cut party, or where we somewhere in the middle. Some people said we're too left-wing, other people said we're too right-wing. And I think that that's one of the reasons that Kemi has said that she wants to take the next period to actually develop a whole set of policy proposals so we can go to the British people and actually explain to them who we are and what we want to achieve should we get back into government. But she has said that she wants to reduce the size of the state, and she has said that she wants us to spend less. So I think you've got an indication of a direction of travel on this already, without the specific policies.
Let's bring in Neil O'Brien at this point, shall we, listening in to the discussion. We can see the people kind of gathering there in central London, and of course only 12 minutes now to go until we're expecting to hear from them. Neil, what would you say to Sam's point that there's an awful lot we haven't heard in a leadership debate that's been dominated by immigration, really?
Well, Robert has had several goes at trying to start a conversation about the NHS. He's written multiple pieces about it. He's come up with some quite detailed suggestions about it. But for whatever reason, that's been less exciting for the media than some of the stuff on migration. I think there is, as Andrew said, there's a huge task for us to renew our economic policies in the face of what Labour are now doing. I mean, this is a party where they said they wouldn't increase taxes on working people, and the first thing they've done is massively increases taxes. And the biggest tax increase is one that's only paid by working people, and they focused it on lower income workers. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. And no surprise that so many people now feel they were misled, not just over the winter fuel payment, not just over the tax rises. But we need to go beyond just critiquing Labour, I think. And that's where the big challenge for us is to develop policies that chime with the public, because on the one hand, the public do want to spend more on the NHS, that's true, but then I'm not sure that they do want to do what Rachel Reeves did the other day and give Ed Miliband £7 billion to spend on a bunch of projects to try and hit this madcap target that he set himself of having a zero carbon grid by 2030, something which is already going to push up electricity prices. You can see in the media today the news that that's going to add £150 to your electricity bills, on top of the cost of the extra taxes, on top of the cost of the higher mortgage rates because of all the extra borrowing, pushing up interest rates. So we can see a critique of the Labour Party that's pretty clear, and the public clearly agree with that. But I think it's for us now to develop our strategy about what we would do differently. And I think, to Sam's point, which is a really good one, we did have a bit of a blurry image, but I think some of those things that we were standing for under Boris, the idea of levelling up, trying to do more for poorer places, trying to have a dynamic market economy, but also use the power of the market to lift up places that are struggling, that is the right position for us, and we mustn't lose sight of that agenda that was so important to our victory in 2019.
Thank you very much, Lou. We're seeing that room filling up now. We've got members of both campaign teams, we've got some journalists and, of course, MPs and other members of the Conservative Party there as well. Only around 10 minutes to go now until we find out the result of the Conservative leadership contest. And I am not calling it. I really am not at this point, because it's very, very hard to get a sense of how Conservative Party members are thinking, and they do love a surprise. Anita Bertain, let's bring you in now, shall we? After 97, it took you 4 goes to find the right leader to lead you to victory. How likely do you think it is that either Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick is going to be Prime Minister?
I think this really hinges on Sam's point. The election, next election, will be about the economy. It will be about GDP per capita. It will be about who can offer the best prescription for growing people's quality of life and living standards. And I think Sam's also right to say that there was a little bit of what I would call cakeism that crept in with Boris Johnson about difficult choices that politicians have to make in order to drive towards a particular positive outcome for the economy. And my sense is that, for instance, that both these politicians are willing to engage in that discussion about what you might get and what you might lose and what those trade-offs might be. I think Kemi said this specifically, like, there are no perfect solutions, only trade-offs. And when you listen to what Jenrick says about whether it's immigration, but actually even things like net zero, he's grappling with some of those questions about where you position yourself in respect of the trade-offs. And so I think that if the Conservative Party says to itself, when it's willing to have a conversation about here's where we can go further, here's where we need to go less far, here are the trade-offs, and here's where we're going to position ourselves, I think that will bode well. And one of the things that I think we have seen from the budget is, the Labour Party has framed their entire election around growth, but that really didn't come through, in my view, in the budget as a kind of, this is a going for growth budget. And that is the thing that really unlocks the kind of cycle of difficult choices that any government will have to make. And if the Conservative Party can convince the country that they've got a better prescription for how you tackle that, then actually I think you could see some interesting shifts.
You see, this is the thing, isn't it, Sam? Because it feels to me like 4 months ago at the beginning of this contest, which feels like another age, I'll be honest, the Conservatives were devastated. They were gloomy, they were despondent, they'd just been absolutely hammered in the election. But things seem to be a bit more optimistic recently, I guess, not least, of course, when they look at the polling and they realise that maybe it might not be, another 10 years in the wilderness.
Yes, but can I disagree with your big point? To this degree, the Conservative Party doesn't have to win an election today. Mm-hmm. And you're completely right. There are signs of optimism, whether it's the polling and the Tories overtook Labour for the first time in a poll yesterday, whether it's the reaction to some elements of the budget. But it's not this Labour Party that they need to defeat. It's the one in 3 or 4 years' time. And that will be one where money has gone into public services. We don't know quite what the growth situation will be then, and it may well be better. It might be worse. And if the Conservative Party's sort of tone all the way through the next few years, they're spending too much, we're not spending enough, but people actually see an improvement in their public services and they actually feel like their life is a little bit better off than it was, then the decisions and the tone taken today won't look like quite a good thing because they were campaigning against a Labour Party that is no longer their opponent.
And I guess this is the great problem of opposition. Your destiny is not really in your hands. You know, governments win or lose elections, not oppositions, right?
Exactly. And, I mean, there's no doubt, you know, that budget presents a lot for an opposition to get their teeth into, and many think it's a shame they didn't have their leader in place a week ago to allow them to get stuck into the budget, not least the reaction of the markets to Rachel Reeves's first big intervention. But, the job of the primary job of the leader of the opposition is to become Prime Minister at the next general election. And sometimes I feel like that goal, as opposed to fighting the latest round of the news cycle, got a little bit forgotten.
Yeah, interesting stuff, definitely. Let's bring in Neil O'Brien as we await the results of the leadership election. Not long to go now, 6 minutes until the 11 o'clock, when we're expecting to hear the acting chair take to the stage. Neil, how important do you think it is that whoever wins offers their rival a decent job in any shadow cabinet?
You know, I think that is very important, and Rob's already said that he would offer jobs to all of the other leadership candidates. I do think there will be an important task in bringing us all together again after the contest, and I'm sure that whoever wins will want to do exactly that.
Well, how about that to you as well, Andrew? Would you hope to see Kemi Badenoch offer Robert Jenrick a decent job if she wins?
Yeah, I think she's already said that she'll offer Robert a senior place in her operation.
She did say she wasn't sure if he would take it.
But that's entirely well. Whether or not they take the jobs offered by whoever wins is a different question altogether. But no, I think that, as Neil says, we know what we've got to do. You set out at the beginning of this programme the scale of our defeat in the last election, the challenges that we face as a party, and not least having to combat a Labour Party with a huge majority now setting out their plans, whether we like it or not, for the next few years. And so it is a huge challenge. So it will mean that all of us, on whatever side of this leadership contest we were on, have to come together to take the fight to the enemies that are the Labour Party, the Reform Party, the Liberal Democrats, and in Scotland still the Scottish National Party, who are not as dead as some might suggest they are. So it's a huge challenge that we've got, but I think both of them are up to the task. I just happen to think that Kemi's more up to it than Rob, but we'll find out in about 4 minutes' time.
And we're going to see the true colours of the next leader of the opposition as well, because they are going to be doing this speech straight after the result. I always think it must be quite hard, because you must have to prep that speech and then know you might not have to give it, which is always a bit of a nightmare scenario. But Anita, when we do hear from whoever's won, what are you hoping that they end up doing in that speech? Yeah,
I think sometimes in opposition, and particularly after a defeat like the one we've just seen, there's a bit of a temptation to fight the old fight, to fight the fight of the last election. And I think that Labour got itself into this cycle quite a lot in the kind of 2010 to 19 years. Perhaps Corbyn was a break from that, and that's partly maybe why he appealed, because he wasn't having the same conversation with voters, and certainly with the Labour Party. And so I think there is a real importance that this is a future-facing conversation. And I certainly think that the Labour Party of today, in terms of having just got into government, and there are many things that are very difficult about government, and I think perhaps they were quite naive about the realities of how difficult governing might be, but that's not a situation that will hold. The more you stay in power, the more you get experience at navigating quite obvious bear traps and minefields. So what you want is a leader that's able to speak to the future and some of those fundamental things that will really matter to voters, like the economy, like public services, but also things like clear borders, but looking to the future rather than diagnosing the past.
I completely agree. There's nothing predestined or nothing written that says that just because voters left the Conservative Party this time, they are, they will come automatically back to the Conservative Party next time if the Labour Party do a bad job. We've got 13 separate parties now represented in Parliament. Reform have very much parked their tanks on the Conservative Party's lawn, and we lost a lot of seats to the Liberal Democrats as well. So it's going to be very tough for whoever wins this leadership election. Despite how easy the Labour Party seemed to be making it for us in the last few months, it's going to get much tougher over the next few months and years for the reasons that Sam set out, and indeed Anita has just said as well.
We've just got a couple of minutes left to go. You can see that room now absolutely packed to the rafters, waiting for the result. You can see Robert Jenrick's wife there at the front row, and of course everyone really waiting to gather and hear the result of that leadership election. Sam, it matters not just for the Conservative Party, not just because whoever wins may go on to become the Prime Minister, but it also matters because the role of leader of the opposition is such an important one when it comes to holding the government to account, isn't it?
The leader of the opposition helps dictate the political conversation in this country. That's why what happens in the next minute and 5 minutes matters enormously. And if it's going to be a choice for that leader about a path that will be more bold or involve more reassurance, do you want to get those voters back quickly, or do you want to take the difficult decisions in opposition? Those are things that will actually shape the Labour government, because it will determine how much space they have, how much freedom, and how hemmed in they fit. It is enormously important. Is the political conversation in this country in the next minute going to turn about cuts versus investment? Is it going to turn and hinge on whether we should stay part of the European Convention of Human Rights? Is that going to dominate years of our political conversation? That is the kind of thing that is at stake that we will find out just after 11.
And really, you can see there the clock ticking down to when we're expecting to hear from the acting chair of the Conservative Party, and then, of course, from the new leader of the Conservative Party and the new leader of the opposition. As we've been saying this morning, it is a result that matters to the people in this room, to the Conservative Party, but most importantly, to the country, because whoever wins can help set that political conversation. Well, it is 11 o'clock. If you are joining us, we are waiting to hear the results of the 4-month-long Conservative Leadership Party election. We're going to find out who is going to be the new leader of the opposition. Is it going to be Kemi Badenoch, or is it going to be Robert Jenrick? Two people who many voters still making their minds up, but most people in the Conservative Party have made their choice on who they think should be the leader of that party. Well, in just a few moments' time, we're expecting the acting chair of the Conservative Party to go and walk in front of that podium, give a short speech, and then Bob Blackburn, who is the chair of the 1922 Committee of Backbenchers, will address the people on your screens right now to read out the results of this leadership election. It's been a remarkable leadership election, I think it's fair to say. 6 candidates, whittled down to 4, and then the absolute intrigue of the MP voting round that saw the once favourite James Cleverly get knocked out, and the two people from the Conservative Party's right, Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick, entering the final round, the ballots of Conservative Party members. Always a very, very difficult group of people to get a handle on, and that is why this race is so unpredictable. I'm absolutely not calling it, even with just minutes to go, or especially with minutes to go, I should say. I'm not going to nail my colours to any mast, but we will find out imminently who the next leader is. Sam, it's been an extraordinary race, hasn't it, developing over the last few months, and today, the crescendo.
It's a race that some people think went on a bit too long, and indeed, I think in that context, it's no surprise that they are keeping us waiting just that little bit longer.
These things never run to time, do they?
And it is one that's been gripping our attention. Look, I remember, what was it, a month ago, where James Cleverly asked the Conservative Party to be more normal. And a week later, was eliminated from the contest. It's a contest where, you were right, there have not been the kind of head-to-head clashes between the two final candidates that we might have expected. Is the person that's going to emerge in a few minutes, walk up to that podium, quite as tested, quite as understood as they might have been?
Here we go. They've just announced the chairman of the Conservative Party, Richard Fuller, to the stage. Let's listen in.
Morning. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and also welcome to everyone who is joining us online as we prepare to announce the name of the new leader of our party. Thank you to the thousands of Conservative Party members who have helped make this leadership election so engaging, and for the crucial role that our members played in putting all our candidates through their paces at events right across the United Kingdom. And a special word of thanks to all 6 candidates, to Tom, to Rob, to Priti, to Mel, to Kemi and to James, who put themselves forward and took the scrutiny of their parliamentary colleagues, the media, and most importantly, of members like you. whoever is announced as our new leader needs our full support. We need to get back out in our communities, rebuild trust with the electorate, and show that we're on the side of people who want to contribute to society and get on with their lives. We all have a role in making that happen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our final two candidates for the leadership of the Conservative and Unionist Party, Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick. And now I would like to introduce the returning officer, the chairman of the 1922 committee, Bob Blackman, to announce the result.
Well, thank you, Richard. And I think the whole party owes a debt of gratitude to you as party chairman since the general election. I'd also like to thank another unsung hero, Stuart Andrew, who's been our chief whip. So we suffered a devastating defeat on the 4th of July, and on the 5th of July, Rishi Sunak decided he would step down as party leader. When I was elected as chairman of the 1922 committee, I was determined that we would have an appropriate opportunity to rebuild our party, consider where we're going, and ensure that we had a broad swathe of candidates to be the leader of our party. Some people said, let's have a short campaign and get it over and done with. Others said, let's have a long campaign into next year. So we reached a compromise. And I think it's fair to say that as a result of the parliamentary process, and indeed the excellent party conference we had, we made party conference a really exciting conference for representatives to attend. So when we decided the process to whittle down the number of candidates from 6 to 4 to send to the conference, that started obviously a process and ends today. Now, members obviously have had the opportunity to vote online and by postal ballot. Some people said they wanted the debate and the opportunity for the new leader to address the budget that we knew was coming. Frankly, I wanted to make sure that Rishi got that chance to give that speech on Wednesday. And Rishi literally eviscerated that rotten budget from a rotten government that it's our duty to replace as soon as possible. So I want to record my thanks to those hard-working and energy-crossing candidates, and also, of course, the team that have made this result possible today. So, before I announce the result, let me thank the party board, the National Union, and all the party staff, in particular Victoria Carslake, who will be leaving us after this particular event, to Civica Election Services for the professionalism they've shown in dealing with the ballots, in both distributing and collecting the votes, both online and by post. I'd also like to thank my Vice Chairman, Martin Vickers, and my Treasurer, Geoffrey Clifton-Brown, my fellow officers of the 22 who enabled the parliamentary process to proceed smoothly, and indeed my parliamentary assistant, Harriet Shoesmith, who did all the work behind the scenes to make the ballots possible in Parliament. And finally, of course, I'd like to ensure we give thanks to the party members. I was determined when we started this process that our party members would have the last word on who our leader should be, and they've done so. I'd like to thank Kemi and Robert for the way they've conducted themselves during this campaign. They've both been outstanding candidates and both worthy candidates to be leader of our great party. Now, the time that you've been waiting for, the result. So I, Bob Blackman MP, Chairman of the 1922 Committee and therefore returning officer for the Conservative and Unionist Party leadership election, declare that the total number of eligible electors was 131,680. The turnout in the election was 72.8%. The total number of votes rejected was 655, of which 610 were rejected because they were either unmarked or void for uncertainty, and 45 ballot papers rejected because they'd voted for more than one candidate. Quite tough in a two-person election. Anyway, the result was Kemi Badenoch, 53,806 votes, and Robert Jenrick, 41,388. Now, the important bit. Therefore, I give notice that Kemi Badenoch is elected as leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. I welcome her to the stage. And it's great, isn't it great that we've got another female leader? And isn't it great that we're the first party to have a black leader of the party? Another glass ceiling shattered. But I welcome Kemi to the stage.
Thank you, everyone. And I want to start by thanking Richard Fuller for his work as our party chairman since July. And also Bob Blackman as returning officer for this contest. You and your teams have done us all a great service. Thank you. But I also want to pay tribute to everyone in the Conservative Party who has been involved in this very long campaign. It has been an experience none of us candidates will ever forget. Thank you for hosting us in your communities, in your village halls, in your pubs, and in your homes. It is the most enormous honor to be elected to this role, to lead the party that I love, the party that has given me so much. I hope that I will be able to repay that debt. There are so many people to thank. Firstly, my family, especially my husband, Hamish. Hamish, I couldn't have done this without you. Thank you for being with me every step of the way. I also want to thank Rishi. No one could have worked harder in such difficult times. Rishi, thank you for everything you did. We all wish you and your wonderful family the very best for the future. I'd also like to pay a special tribute to Robert Jenrick, who has fought a great campaign. Rob, we have all been impressed by your energy and your determination. You and I know that we don't actually disagree on very much. And I have no doubt that you have a key role to play in our party for many years to come. Thank you. I'd also like to thank all the other candidates, Priti, Mel, Tom, and James, for your kind words and your many insights. We have come through this campaign more united, and the party needs you now more than ever. The task that stands before us is tough, but simple. Our first responsibility as His Majesty's loyal opposition is to hold this Labour government to account. Our second is no less important. It is to prepare over the course of the next few years for government, to ensure that by the time of the next election, we have not just a clear set of Conservative pledges that appeal to the British people, but a clear plan for how to implement them. A clear plan to change this country by changing the way that government works. The Prime Minister is discovering all too late the perils of not having such a plan. That huge job begins today. It will seek to involve all of our colleagues in Parliament, in the Scottish Parliament, the Senate, our friends in Northern Ireland, as well as councillors and party members. But this is not just about the Conservative Party. It is about the people we want to bring back to the Conservative Party. It is about the people we need to bring into the Conservative Party. It is about what the Conservative Party needs to be over the next 5, 10, and 20 years. Our party is critical to the success of our country. But to be heard, we have to be honest. Honest about the fact that we made mistakes. Honest about the fact that we let standards slip. The time has come to tell the truth. The time has come to tell the truth, to stand up for our principles, to plan for our future, to reset our politics and our thinking, and to give our party and our country the new start that they deserve. It is time to get down to business. It is time to renew. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
It's time to get down to business, it's time to renew, and it's time to tell the truth and be honest with people about the problems within the Conservative Party. Kemi Badenoch there setting out her vision for the future of her party in her very first speech after winning the Conservative leadership, posing there, of course, with her partner, the new leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch. You can see there Robert Jenrick with a slightly forced smile on his face as he claps Kemi Badenoch after winning the contest. It was not quite as close as people thought it would be, with quite a high turnout, actually, of well over 70,000, 72.8% turnout. Kemi Badenoch wins with 50,806 votes to Robert Jenrick's 41,000. And she, of course, is the new leader of the Conservative Party and the leader of the opposition. What matters now, of course, is her first choices. She has deliberately held a policy-free campaign, but that's going to have to change at some point. Sam Coates, what's your reflections on that result?
we're at the beginning of a fascinating journey. Kemi Badenoch must make decisions in the next 24, 48 hours that will determine the Conservatives' future. Personnel decisions, tone, and the whole approach. Kemi Badenoch just took to the stand and made clear how she was going to hold the government to account by talking about the Prime Minister not having a plan, but then did something completely fascinating. She effectively called out the last Conservative government. She said, "We let standards slip. The time has come to tell the truth." And I think in those two short sentences, she is ringing in the changes in the Conservative Party, changes that will take that party on a direction. I don't know where it's going to end. If you remember during the conference speech that Kemi Badenoch gave, Sophie, she promised to review everything that government does. Kemi Badenoch is not shying away from the biggest possible task in politics. She tells us today she is going to look at every element of what government does and decide whether a future Conservative government should support it or junk it. But she's also saying that we're preparing for a Conservative government. That will require reassuring voters, bringing voters on board, making sure that people aren't scared of her plans and the boldness of her vision. She is promising two things at once, and it's going to be fascinating to see how she starts to mould them two into a coherent direction.
It really will. In many ways, Kemi Badenoch was the kind of high-risk, high-reward candidate for the Conservatives, the kind of wild-card candidate, and it is quite hard to pin her down politically because she, as you say, she hasn't been pinned down by policy. She's been talked about going back to first principles, ripping everything up, looking at it again, and who knows, frankly, where that journey is going to end. But it's certainly going to be a journey that is an unpredictable one and perhaps bumpy at times as well. Andrew, Barry, let's talk to you. You back the right horse?
Well, yes. Delighted, obviously. Delighted for Kemi, not just because I think she'll be an excellent leader, and I think we saw in that speech she's going to take us on a journey from where we are right now to where we need to get to if we're going to be the next government. But also delighted for her as a friend. I've known Kemi since the day we swore in to Parliament together back in 2017, and she's always struck me as somebody who's very special, and I think this is going to be a very exciting time for the Conservative Party and the country. So, yeah, I'm absolutely delighted.
And Anita, look, I know that this is a party that doesn't really like identity politics, but you were the guys who brought it up today, so you'll forgive me for the question. Bob Blackman, the chair of the 1922 committee, isn't it great we've got another female leader, and isn't it great we're the first party to have a black leader, another glass ceiling shattered? How important, or not, do you think it is that Kemi Badenoch, black woman, now the leader of the opposition?
I think it is important for espousing the Conservative values that really matter, which is meritocracy, which is about there not being this notion that certain people belong in certain jobs and have certain responsibilities, and this aspiration that drives at the very heart of, I think, conservatism, that I think really does speak to how someone like Kemi would get to the top of the Conservative Party. People think she's simply fascinating and brilliant and has something special, and nothing else will hold her back. And I think the Conservative Party is very analytical, ruthless, call it what you may, in wanting to get the best possible kind of candidate. And that does mean that everyone thinks they can go for it, which I think is a part of this which really matters. On the question of, Kemi as a black woman, I think in some ways, I think of her, and more fascinatingly, as a kind of first-generation immigrant. And I think her immigrant experience is particularly telling, and I think speaks to a wider community of people. So personally, my family's from Ghana. My parents came to Ghana in their teens, sort of like Kemi did. And I think that what she speaks about in terms of her values, in terms of being able to contrast the UK and its institutions with countries abroad, I think that stuff really does come through. And I think will speak to quite a lot of people across, different races in the country who have come to England not generations and generations ago, but in the last sort of 30, 40, 50 years.
Can I also ask, there's been criticism of Kemi Badenoch throughout the campaign that she's aggressive, that she's abrasive. And I, do sometimes reflect that this is some of the language that we often use about black women Are there any kind of tropes in there that you recognise? Do you think that she gets a harder time than other people because of that? Or do you think that actually it's just, people are just talking about her personality?
So, I mean, I know Kemi personally, so I would say that Kemi definitely is someone who's direct. I mean, I personally am also someone who's quite direct. And I do think that there are people that people expect that from and people that people are surprised by. So I think there is some nuance that you have to kind of add to that lens of scrutinising Kemi. And actually, I think all politicians, like, what are the expectations of what a politician of this nature who looks this way should do and how do they actually behave? So I think there is that she will have to continually navigate. But I also think that it brings something unique. She is someone who is willing to speak her mind and almost doesn't sort of just starts from that principle. And I think that's really important in politics when people are looking for politicians that are very authentic to themselves. And I don't think you watch Kemi give an interview or give an answer and think, oh, she calculated that one.
No.
And maybe actually part of the opposition journey, maybe she'll be moving in that direction. But nevertheless, she starts from a place that I think will be interesting to voters.
Absolutely. And look, just to concur, I served as a junior minister when she was Secretary of State for Trade in her department. And yes, she can be forceful. And if you're going to pick a fight with her, be sure of your arguments before you walk into the room, because she will be certain to get the better of you if you do not. That's from experience. I speak very much from experience. But I think it also speaks to her and her credit that every single junior minister or MP or peer that was returned to Parliament that had worked with her in any of the departments that she served in ended up supporting her candidacy for leadership. Now, that speaks to somebody that yes, knows her mind, yes, is forceful and takes decisions, but also brings a team with her. And I think that we will see that more and more as she pulls the party together after this leadership
You say she's someone who knows her mind, but one of the other criticisms of her in the campaign has been that she hasn't put out policies, and it is quite hard to pin her down on things. I found that when I asked what I think are quite big picture questions on tax, on NHS, she's like, no, I'm not going to get drawn into that. Is that because she's deliberately keeping her powder dry, or is that because she just doesn't know? Is she an ideologue without any actual ideas?
No, not at all. But she's also a realist. We have got at least 4 years until we ask the British people to select their next government. So there's no point in setting out policies to fight the battles of 2024 when we'll be fighting the battles of 2028, 2029. Better now to set out a broad brush approach to the ideology of where the party is, and then put meat on the bones in terms of our actual policy as we go towards trying to sell the Conservative Party anew to a very sceptical British public. Yes, we're ahead in the latest polls. The green shoots of recovery seem to be there, probably more as a result of Labour's missteps than anything that we have managed to do over the past few months. But we need to build on that. And that is the hard work that Kemi's going to set about doing right now. It's the hard work that all of us in positions of responsibility in the party need to take forward as well.
Well, of course, if you're just joining us, the big news this hour is that Kemi Badenoch has won the leadership of the Conservative Party. She got 53,806 votes to 41,388 for Robert Jenrick on a turnout of 72.8%, which is actually a pretty healthy turnout. It's better than was being mooted at the beginning of that week. But Kemi Badenoch there, the new leader of the Conservative Party. Let's bring in Neil O'Brien, shall we? Neil, you, of course, backed Robert Jenrick. What's your reaction to the result?
Well, I'm obviously sad for Rob and his family, and indeed these contests are so hard on the friends and the families of the candidates. It is incredibly hard pounding, and the scrutiny is just relentless. So for both Kemi and Robert, I feel like they've been through a real mill. But look, I agree with exactly what Andrew just said. I do think that Kemi actually, there's this whole narrative about her being abrasive. I worked with her as a minister. That is not what I saw. I saw someone who was thoughtful, who was thorough, who was sort of bright and asked all the right questions. But I'd never detected the idea she was abrasive. I do think that is partly because she's a woman. People say this, and I don't think it's true. I don't think it's fair. So I think her approach has been very much, we need to go back to first principles, do a really deep dive into everything that we have stood for. A couple of people during this conversation have mentioned that the Conservative Party ended up with a rather blurry image at the last election. People didn't know what we stood for, and I think that's right. And I think that one of the things that Kemi always wants to do is to think philosophically about, what do we stand for? What is the right answer to this problem, rather than rushing to judgment on things. And I think that is generally what successful oppositions do, that they actually quite painstakingly rebuild from the ground up so that in 4 years' time, not tomorrow, but in 4 years' time, we have a clear idea of what we stand for, how we're different to Labour, and why we'd be a better choice and deserve to get back in. So, look, I think she'll be excellent. She'll be a superb leader, and there's a lot of excitement around her. There's always been a sort of charisma about her. She does make people look afresh at the party. So I think it's going to be an exciting process. I'm terribly sad for Rob not winning. I think he'd be great too. But look, I think she'll be brilliant. So I'm very excited about the coming weeks and months.
OK, thank you very much, Neil O'Brien there. Robert Jenrick backer, who is now saying, of course, that Kemi Badenoch, he thinks, would be a great leader of the opposition. Right, let's bring in our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, shall we? Although we have it, Kemi Badenoch. And it's going to be a roller coaster. I feel like that is the one thing we know, that from now it is going to be a roller coaster.
For a couple of reasons. And let me just look at the result first, the numbers of this result, because we think it's 57-43, broadly speaking. When you look back through past Tory leadership contests, that means that that result is as narrow, I believe, as it has ever been. The second closest, and we don't know to the 10th decimal point, but...
we'll forgive you that, Sam, don't worry.
But in 2022, Liz Truss got 57.4% to Rishi Sunak's 42.6%. And every other time it's gone to the membership, actually the margin, the victorious margin, has been bigger. So the first thing to say is that it's close, and it's a bit closer. It's a bit closer than it's ever been before. You mentioned turbulence. You know, when you have a close contest, that can sometimes mean that, you know, people were a bit more split. But you're right on another level, Sophie, and we've been talking about this in lots of different ways. But what has happened in this contest is the membership have not done what sometimes, perhaps lazily as journalists, we think they're going to do, and go for the more right wing of the two contenders. Instead, they have gone for the more eye-catching of the two contenders, because there is no doubt in my mind that when Kemi Badenoch speaks, you are much more likely to unmute the telly and turn up the volume, because she says interesting things in interesting ways. That is how she pitched herself, and that is what they're getting, for better or for worse, for the Conservative Party.
We'll find out, won't we? Sam Coates, thank you very much indeed. Right, we can bring in now our political editor, Beth Rigby, who is at the Central London venue where the result was all going on. Beth, what's the result like in the room? It's been closer than many other races.
Yes, Sophie. Look, the result came in. So I couldn't actually get on air because we had terrible reception in here. But Kemi Badenoch winning there, but by 53,000 votes she clocked up against Jenrick's 41,000. And to put that into context, Rishi Sunak won 60,000 votes in 2022 when he lost to Liz Truss. It looks on the number that 40,000 members didn't vote at all, and that made you that this party's a bit divided, not entirely happy by the final choice. And Kemi Badenoch's going to have her work cut out with Conservative Party members, let alone with the country. But her supporters here telling me after it's time for the party to come together. But look, I've got Victoria Aitkins with me. Vicky, do you want to come up on my... how's that? Does that work, Nathan? Come up on my pew. Vicky, look, you backed Rob Jenrick. Are you very disappointed?
Look, I know how hard Rob and the whole team worked on this. I think he did a fantastic job. He worked, for months now. He's been racing around the country, speaking to members, media, really holding himself out to be tested by everyone. And so, of course, I feel very disappointed for him and for his family and for his team. But what I do know is that we, as a Conservative family, now really want this to work. And so, huge congratulations to Kemi. She's got an amazing privilege to to lead our party. And I know that all of us will want to be supporting her in that effort, because not only do we as a Conservative family want our party to get back on track, but we also have an important job to do. As she said in her speech, we've got to hold this dreadful socialist government to account. And we know that we can do this. We've seen this week the impact of the budget on people's lives, whether they live in rural communities, whether they employ people or indeed employees. And so there's a real job of work for us to do.
You're currently Shadow Health Secretary. You were the Health Secretary. Do you hope to hold hold that portfolio?
Gosh, no, I'm in the hands of others now, but what I do know is that my personal commitment to both the health portfolio, but also, of course, to my wonderful constituency that re-elected me, these are the things that I will be focusing on. And I also think, whatever comes out of the wash over the next few days, we are back in the chamber on Monday with the budget debate, holding this socialist government to account on their tax hikes.
But you probably heard me run through the numbers a bit, and I haven't had time yet to look at them properly, but it looks like Kemi Badenoch pulled in 53,000 votes from 130,000 members. It looks like 40,000 members didn't even vote. She got less votes as a winner than she did against Rishi Sunak losing to Liz Truss in 2022. This is not a united party, and this is not a great mandate. I put that to you.
Well, look, I mean, we'll go through the figures obviously later on, but what I do know is, everybody is willing Kemi on now. We want this to succeed. As I say, we've got to make it succeed, not just for us as Conservative members and activists, but also for the sake of the country. And Rishi Sunak handed a really great gift to his successor today, because today in the polls, the Conservatives are ahead of Labour.
One poll did put you ahead.
Absolutely.
First time in 3 years.
Absolutely, and this is after their socialist budget, where they will have been hoping that they were streets ahead of us all.
I have to say that the Labour would say it wasn't a socialist budget, because no one's there from Labour to make that point.
Well, no, I accept that, but from the perspective of employers who are facing massive wage increases for nothing.
Vicky, it seems to me that you are a Jenrick backer. Your man did not win, but you are here on Sky Live now after this result to say the party needs to put up, shut up, get behind Kemi and stop fighting. Is that how you feel?
Exactly right, and we are all willing Kemi and the whole of our party on to win. I genuinely think we've seen a terrible start to this Labour government, and the responsibility we bear is a very serious one, and I know there'll be lots of people wanting to help Kemi in her job.
Some of your colleagues, not least my fellow podcaster Ruth Davidson, doubts whether Kemi will even be the leader at the next election. She said the same about Jenrick, actually, who she voted for. Do you 100% hand on heart think that the leader now, Kemi, will lead the party into the next general election?
Yes, I do, because I know during this contest, each of the candidates were so very, very carefully tested, and all of them have got the message loud and clear from the party, from us as members of Parliament, but also from the public, that we need to get ourselves together, really, really take the fight to Labour, and to ensure that we're presenting a positive vision for our party and for our country. I didn't come into politics to oppose. I came into politics to do stuff, to create better lives for people, to help improve our public services, to help improve our nation's health and wealth. And so this is the challenge that Kemi and all of us face now, and I think it's a really exciting one.
Final question. Did you manage to see Rob Jenrick just afterwards? What did he say? Did you see him?
I didn't, because I had promised many of your colleagues to come and speak, and I wanted to keep my promises.
He must be really gutted, do you think?
Both he and Mikhail, his wonderful wife, who are very dear friends of mine, they have worked their socks off, but also, and this doesn't always they don't always get the attention they deserve. The team of people behind Rob, these are actually quite a lot of younger people giving up their jobs temporarily to work on this campaign. They have given their life and soul to this, and so it is as much for them that I want to say thank you, as well as, of course, to Rob for standing.
And he will serve in shadow cabinet, do you think, if Kemi offers him a job? Well, she said she'd offer all the candidates a job.
Yeah, look, Rob is as committed to the Conservative Party, healing and renewing, as Kemi is, and indeed we all are. So I really think this is a fresh page now that we need to turn, and my enormous thanks to Rob, but to all the candidates for standing and all their teams that supported them.
Vicky Aikens, thank you very much. Shadow Health Secretary there, thank you very much. And stepping off my stage. We're on a little podium here. So that was Victoria Aitken. She is the Shadow Health Secretary. I think that was interesting. She was a big Jenrick backer, talking about the party now needing to pull together, unite behind Kemi Badenoch, saying that she thinks Kemi is going to lead the party into the next general election. But look, there are issues around the mandate here, just in terms of the Conservative Party membership, 130,000 eligible voters, 50 53,000 backing Kemi Badenoch. We knew that many Conservatives were unhappy with that final choice. And as I was saying, she got less votes than Rishi Sunak did when he lost to Liz Truss. So there is a rebuild there for her within the Conservative Party, but also within the Parliamentary Party. I spoke to Helen Whately, who is backing him, and she talked about the party needing to come together. That's an echo there from Victoria Aikins, who backed Robert Jenrick. So I think one of the big questions now will be, how does Kemi Badenoch shape that shadow cabinet? Andrew Griffith, who I bumped into yesterday, you know, will he become, for example, Shadow Chancellor? That is a big question. But will she bring in the other candidates, as she said she would? James Cleverly indicating this weekend that he would like a period on the backbenchers. So now all eyes on Kemi Badenoch. In the election campaign, her election campaign, she really did not talk about policy. She didn't want to talk about policy. She said on the stage there that this is about truth, being honest about mistakes, being honest about what went wrong, how the party put it right, and the rebuild to sell themselves back to the public. So I think there's going to be a shadow cabinet, a new shadow cabinet. It's going to be a big policy effort from her to get some policies put together that they can try to sell to the public. And I think there's a little bit of a glimmer of hope for them, as Vicky Aikins was saying there about this one poll, the first in 3 years, showing the Conservative Party ahead of Labour. Just one poll, and it came out on the final day of Rishi Sunak's leadership. But as Robert Jenrick said, nicking the line from Sir Keir Starmer when he became leader of the opposition, the Conservative Party have a mountain to climb, the worst parliamentary defeat ever, the last general election, and they have just 121 MPs against Labour's 400 plus.
Beth, thank you very much indeed. Beth Rigby there at a fast emptying venue in central London, where the leader of the Conservative Party has just been announced. And that leader is Kemi Badenoch. As Beth was saying, she has got a huge job to try and rebuild the Conservative Party, to piece it back together after that shattering defeat earlier this year, where the electorate really resoundingly turned against them. In her speech to members, she was effectively saying that the Conservative Party need to be open and honest about how it let people down last time. Let's see how it's going to go down with the members, shall we? We can go back to Kettering, where Rob Powell has been getting the reaction from Conservative Party members there. And, Rob, it was interesting, wasn't it? She won, you know, I guess convincingly, but at the same time, it was a minority of Conservative Party members who ended up backing her.
Yeah, and we did a show of hands here just before the result was announced. I'd say it was about 50-50 between the sort of 30 or so maybe members that are here who voted Robert Jenrick and who voted Kemi Badenoch. I think some of the instant reaction, I think people were quite impressed with her speech, the strength of her speech. And we had our camera trained on the members here when the result came in. So we can watch that World Cup winning goal moment and how it played out here in Kettering now. This is what it looked like.
53,806 votes. And Robert Jenrick, 41,000.
Right, so let's have a chat to some of the members here that are still here in the pub in South Kettering. You're the party chairman for the local area.
Yep.
But you voted for Robert Jenrick. I think you said that he would be maybe a bit more of a sort of stable candidate or bring the party together, I think was. What's your reaction then to Kemi Badenoch winning? Are you a bit worried now? Or
No, not at all. Congratulations to Kemi. I'm sure that locally we will rally behind her, and I just hope that the MPs do the same.
And what did you make of her speech?
It was very good. It said all the right things, made a statement for us, so hopefully moving forward we can all be a united party in opposition, ready for the next general election where we can win.
It's quite sort of uncompromising parts of the speech. She sort of talked about it's time to tell the truth.
Exactly.
Do you worry it's going to cause friction within the party?
It shouldn't do. We should be open. We should accept our mistakes and move forward and learn from them.
Okay. Now, you voted for Robert Jenrick as well.
I did,
so
yes,
what's your reaction then, your initial reaction to Kemi Badenoch taking?
You know, it was always a win-win situation for me. I've been in other votes where not so happy with the results, but either way, it was going to be a great result. The reason, my reasons for Robert were partially due to what's gone on in the party and thinking that he was maybe a calmer influence in terms of uniting the party. However, personally, I really stand for strong women, you know, and, you know, I'm not afraid of that. I think it's fantastic. So, you know, I thought her speech was inspiring, and actually the way that she paid tribute to everybody in there that had run for the leadership, I thought was great. She brought them all in. Hopefully they will work with her. I'm sure they will. And I think there is just a general consensus in the party that now I think it's fantastic to admit what's gone wrong. I think you should always do that, learn from it, acknowledge it, learn from it and make sure it doesn't happen again. So I found her speech inspiring and refreshing, and I'm really excited for what's to come.
And you liked her speech as well?
Yes, I loved her speech. I thought it was very strong, showed her character, and I saw like aspects of Margaret Thatcher in her, and I hope she is like that, because I feel like we need a strong leader. I feel like previously we've had a bit wishy-washy with Rishi Sunak, so yeah, I do hope that she's like that.
What do you think the focus should be now for Kemi Badenoch? Do you think there needs to be a period of sort of self-reflection for the party, or do you think she should get down to basically attacking the government?
I think she should attack the government straight away, definitely, especially with Keir Starmer. I think he's taken the mick a bit with his free stuff, his free things that he's getting. So I think we need to attack the government. I think that Labour and Keir Starmer are hypocrites.
Now, you organised a lot of the canvassing and the campaigning, didn't you?
Yes.
So based on, you know, your really extensive sort of doorstep conversations, I guess, how do you think Kemi Badenoch will go down with some of the people that I guess didn't turn out for you, for the Conservatives in July?
I think what I really respected was her engineer's approach to policy. We've got some massive structural issues, and actually I respected the fact that she wasn't drawn into, for example, the ECHR agreeing immediately that we were going to leave or stay, but actually to analyse, review and assess, work with all the relevant people.
It's the Convention on Human Rights, yes.
And I think ultimately that's what we've got to look at. Where do we stand as a party? Let's go back to what we stand for, core principles, and then win back the support of those natural Conservatives who ultimately stayed at home or went elsewhere because we lost that trust. I think it's crucial that we look at what we propose to do for the country, not just for 5 years, but 20, 30 years ahead, and then in turn win that next generation of supporters who will be hopefully appeal to that side of things.
When she talked about it's time to tell the truth, we let standards slip, is there any part of you that worries that, golly, she's going to come and knock heads together and really sort of rub some people up the wrong way, even if that is, you know, in the name of speaking the truth? You know, politicians, I guess, have to sort of sometimes compromise or sort of cloak what they're saying a little bit to win people and bring people along. Do you think she's going to do that, or is she going to bluntly be almost too punchy?
I think it's important to keep united. We've got a front bench, hopefully, of many talents that can come together. I think ultimately honesty is important. I think it's important to look at what went wrong. There was, for example, poor behaviour during the term previously that lost us a lot of support. I think if we can learn from that, move forwards and ultimately consider the policies that are going to get us re-elected, win back that trust, then honesty is important, but also making sure that it's sort of compromise is not necessarily a bad thing, but just getting a balance of both so we can move forward collectively and strongly.
OK, and very finally, all of you, one-word answers. Is she still going to be Conservative Party leader come the next general election, assuming that is 5 years' time?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Yes. Well, there you have it. I think a lot of Robert Jenrick voters here, Sophie, but I think even from before the result was announced, a lot of admiration for both candidates as well. So I think a result that will not necessarily be everyone's specific supported candidate, but it seems to have gone down pretty well anyway.
Rob Powell, thank you very much indeed. Really interesting to get the views of those Conservative Party members who, of course, have had such a big role in choosing the next leader of the opposition. And I feel like we should all buckle up because it's going to be Kemi Badenoch. It's going to be really interesting to see the direction she takes her party on, because, of course, she hasn't been pinned down in terms of policy, but she's certainly been pretty big talking when it comes to all sorts of things, from autism to maternity pay. She's someone who's not afraid to speak her mind. Right, let's bring in a panel, shall we? We've got Sam Coates, our Deputy Political Editor. We've got Andrew Bowie, Conservative MP, who backed Kemi Badenoch, Anita Boateng, former Conservative Special Advisor, and we're also speaking to, down the line, the Conservative MP, Neil O'Brien, who backed Robert Jenrick in the leadership. Great to have you all with us. Now, as we've been kind of chatting this morning, Sam's got a kind of burning question that he's been keen to put to the panel.
Look, I'm just fascinated by this result because we've ended up with the less right-wing of the two candidates ending up being crowned Conservative Party leader, and just wondering whether there is this particular dynamic at heart. Start with you, Andrew. That one of the things that Tory members have had to weigh up is whether or not Robert Jenrick might eventually have ended up allowing Nigel Farage into the Conservative Party. And the fear of that, fair or unfair, was one of the reasons why more people ended up going for Kemi Badenoch. Do you think that was a bit of a driver? Because Robert Jenrick did look at points like he was flirting with that much more. Kemi Badenoch, not so.
Well, I mean, it could well be the case. Kemi said that when somebody threatens to burn down your church, you don't welcome them through the door, in reference to Nigel Farage's possible coming into the tent that is the Conservative Party. But I think a lot of people were also a little bit concerned about Rob's strident position on the ECHR, whereas Kemi's was far more nuanced. And yes, she's admitted we may well have to leave the ECHR if we're to get illegal migration down to acceptable levels. But that's not something we should be taking a decision on right now, nor do we want to plunge ourselves into a period of division within the Conservative Party, again, that might ultimately lead to. So I think for a host of different reasons, people found themselves voting for Kemi. There's something whilst we were waiting there for it to come back that I was thinking, this is the first leader the Conservative Party's had that got elected post the Brexit referendum. The first leader that has been elected post David Cameron being leader. Kemi was elected alongside me into the Theresa May government. So I think she brings with it a whole new generational perspective in terms of what it means to be a Conservative MP, and indeed what it means to be a Conservative in the country post that referendum, that defining moment for our party and our country over the past few years. So it is a very interesting moment for us, but everyone will have to explain themselves, to themselves and indeed to others, why they voted for Kemi. No doubt some of them were driven by the reasons Sam said.
Let's bring in Neil O'Brien on Sam's point. I do wonder if there is a kind of bigger question here about what the centre-right of the party do, people who were perhaps not that happy with the final two, because it did feel like a few of them kind of switched to the Kemi Badenoch camp in the last kind of week or so of the campaign. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I have met a lot of Conservative members and talked to a lot of them about the race, and the point that Sam made hasn't come up at all for the people I've talked to, at least. But I think a lot of it has been less about policy differences, which, to be honest with you, are not huge. So, for example, Rob said we should leave the ECHR. Kemi said that we should probably end up leaving the ECHR. The policy differences are not massive. I think a lot of it has been kind of about what people are attracted to in terms of the personalities. And that has been one of the big drivers of it. People clearly attracted to Kemi, who is a very, very effective communicator, does bring a sort of freshness to it. She, Andrew and I were all elected together in 2017. So it is a kind of turning of a page to a kind of new generation of leaders here. So I think that actually people have made a positive choice rather than a negative one. It's not mainly been about policy, but
I just want to come in, Neil, because I'm interested in your framing about how people made a positive choice rather than a negative choice. But it does feel to me that there were some people who perhaps backed Kemi Badenoch as a result of the fact they didn't want Robert Jenrick in. I mean, I remember talking to one member of the Shadow Cabinet who said, you know, he was closer to Robert Jenrick, but he felt that he'd been captured by the right of the party, in his words.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. You'll always find some people who do or don't want a particular candidate, but I think people have voted for Kemi, to be honest with you, because they like her, they like the cut of her jib, they like her style, they like the way that she takes on Labour. And I just don't... People say that they're both on the right of the party, and I think they're not that easy to pin down, either of them, particularly not Kemi. There's bits of her agenda, as you just heard from her first speech, challenging some of the things that we've got wrong in the past, challenging some of the low standards of behaviour that hurt us so much, and rightly so, in the last general election, but other bits of her that also want to take the fight to Labour and some of the things that they are getting wrong. So I'm not sure it's as simple as left versus right or any of those kind of policy positions. I think a lot of people have just been quite attracted to the way that she conducts herself, and she is genuinely a brilliant communicator. So I'm excited about how things are going to pan out with her as our leader.
Neil, it's Sam Coates. Just a quick question about your own position here. 2 years ago, you backed Kemi Badenoch for the leadership, and you're one of the people that's actually gone in the other direction to kind of how the party seems to have gone today. I'm just wondering how you feel about having made the switch, you know, from backing the person who ended up winning to the person who didn't.
Yeah, so as you can tell from the fact that I previously voted for her, I think she's great, right? And I have previously supported her to be the leader of the party. I didn't choose to vote for Robert this time round because I suddenly thought that Kemi wasn't a good candidate. Absolutely not. I continue to think she's excellent. I think she will do a good job. For me, it was an extremely marginal decision. I voted for Rob because I thought I wanted to have clarity very early on the question of ECHR and migration. You can argue that either way, and a lot of my friends went the other way, including Andrew. In general, I actually agree with the idea that you put most of these policy questions into a kind of long review. You can't be pinned down too early in the Parliament because things will have changed by the end of it. You do need to do the root and branch. As it happens, on the question of migration, I thought we wanted to provide earlier certainty on that question. But look, I think we'll get to the right position with Kemi on this. And I think in general, her strategy of having a deep, thorough review, quite a self-critical review, as you just heard from her, of our policies and our positions on things, is broadly the right one. So it's not that I thought she was a terrible candidate. No, quite far from it. I think she's excellent. So for me, I just thought that Robert had the slight edge in terms of having that early clarity on things like migration. But to be honest with you, I can perfectly see the position of people who took the other view on it and have gone with Kemi. I think she'd be great. You know, I voted for her for a reason last time round. I think she's got massive potential, and I think she'll do a good job.
Sounds like the kiss of death, Neil. Whoever you vote for doesn't end up winning.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's true. Yeah, exactly. It's me that swung it.
It's me that swung it.
There you
End
go.
of the analysis.
It tells you about my judgment.
Thanks very much indeed. Neil O'Brien, I'm keen to get your take on what we've been discussing as well. And why do you think it did seem to be that perhaps Kemi Badenoch ended up attracting a few more of those voters, perhaps more centrist voters?
Yeah, I think it's actually less about the kind of Farage question and more actually about Kemi kind of having her own centre of gravity. Because I think that a lot of, Jenrick's conversation, and Kemi has reflected too on, we lost voters to Reform and we lost voters to, all the other parties that you can name. But it felt as though her pivot is much more like, I'm concerned with what the Conservative Party does, and I'm concerned with our direction. And if we are strong and clear in our convictions, people will come. And I think that perhaps rhetorically and in terms of how Jenrick has outlined his policies, he did sort of talk about them perhaps a little more in the context of other parties and in the context of Reform. So it's interesting because I would say that Jenrick has also said he wanted to talk about the NHS and he wanted to talk about, the economy, and he wanted to talk about immigration. But immigration really has been the centre of his focus, and that's maybe also skewed that perception that he was going to be much more reactive to what Farage is doing rather than being his own man.
Really interesting, yeah.
This is the most important moment, the most exciting moment to watch. Kemi Badenoch has won the Tory party leadership contest by pitching a bold vision of conservatism. Now she's got to face the country. And the question is, does she start scaring off voters by being too radical, or are they attracted to doing things differently? How she moulds those two things is going to be absolutely essential in the weeks and months to come.
And there is an element of, one of her challenges is, if she's doing this broad brush policy review and really kind of putting everything on the table and deciding is, do you end up sort of trying to boil the ocean, right? How do you get on the front foot and show, as she said, that you can win and govern the country by showing you can be a good leader of the opposition without kind of biting off more than you can chew. And also her different approach to the media and when she's going to be out and about and how she does the job of opposition. There's a lot more unknowns in her.
So interesting. We'll have lots more from all of you coming up just a few moments' time. But thank you very much. Really interesting take. Well, if you're just joining us, this woman, Kemi Badenoch, is the new leader of the opposition, and she has got quite a task ahead, reuniting her party. It should be said that the majority of party members didn't back her, and then obviously taking her pitch to the country and rebuilding the National Conservative offering after that devastating electoral defeat. The one thing we do know is she's a sharpshooter, straight shooter, some would say, and it is going to be a bit of a roller coaster with this woman in charge of the Conservative Party. Much more coming up next. Hello from Westminster, where the Conservative Party has just elected its new leader. It's 12 o'clock. Kemi Badenoch, the former business secretary, is the new leader of the opposition and the first black leader of a major political party in the UK.
This is not just about the Conservative Party. It is about the people we want to bring back to the Conservative Party. It is about the people we need to bring into the Conservative Party.
She defeated her rival, Robert Jenrick, relatively comfortably, as MPs say now is the time for the party to unite. We'll bring you all the reaction and analysis of that news over the next hour with our panel here in Westminster. Hello, good afternoon. Well, within the last hour, the Conservative Party has named its new leader. Kemi Badenoch, the former business secretary, has been chosen by the party to replace Rishi Sunak, becoming the first black leader of a major political party in Westminster.
Kemi Badenoch, 53,806 votes, and Robert Jenrick, 41,388.
Well, that was the moment she was announced as the new leader of the opposition, faced with the challenge of rebuilding the Conservatives after the party's disastrous election defeats in July. Right, let's take a moment, shall we, and look closer at the result today. Kemi Badenoch received 53,806 votes, while Robert Jenrick received 41,388 votes. That was on a 72% turnout. Well, after being chosen as the new Conservative Party leader, Kemi Badenoch addressed the party. Here's what she had to say.
Thank you, everyone. And I want to start by thanking Richard Fuller for his work as our party chairman since July. And also Bob Blackman as returning officer for this contest. You and your teams have done us all a great service. Thank you. But I also want to pay tribute to everyone in the Conservative Party who has been involved in this very long campaign. It has been an experience none of us candidates will ever forget. Thank you for hosting us in your communities, in your village halls, in your pubs, and in your homes. It is the most enormous honour to be elected to this role, to lead the party that I love. The party that has given me so much. I hope that I will be able to repay that debt. There are so many people to thank. Firstly, my family, especially my husband, Hamish. Hamish, I couldn't have done this without you. Thank you for being with me every step of the way. I also want to thank Rishi. No one could have worked harder in such difficult times. Rishi, thank you for everything you did. We all wish you and your wonderful family the very best for the future. I'd also like to pay a special tribute to Robert Jenrick, who has fought a great campaign. Rob, we have all been impressed by your energy and your determination. You and I know that we don't actually disagree on very much. And I have no doubt that you have a key role to play in our party for many years to come. Thank you. I'd also like to thank all the other candidates, Priti, Mel, Tom, and James, for your kind words and your many insights. We have come through this campaign more united, and the party needs you now more than ever. The task that stands before us is tough, but simple. Our first responsibility as His Majesty's loyal opposition is to hold this Labour government to account. Our second is no less important. It is to prepare over the course of the next few years for government, to ensure that by the time of the next election, we have not just a clear set of Conservative pledges that appeal to the British people, but a clear plan for how to implement them. A clear plan to change this country by changing the way that government works. The Prime Minister is discovering all too late the perils of not having such a plan. That huge job begins today. It will seek to involve all of our colleagues in Parliament, in the Scottish Parliament, the Senate, our friends in Northern Ireland, as well as councillors and party members. But this is not just about the Conservative Party. It is about the people we want to bring back to the Conservative Party. It is about the people we need to bring into the Conservative Party. It is about what the Conservative Party needs to be over the next 5, 10, and 20 years. Our party is critical to the success of our country. But to be heard, we have to be honest. Honest about the fact that we made mistakes. Honest about the fact that we let standards slip. The time has come to tell the truth. The time has come to tell the truth, to stand up for our principles, to plan for our future, to reset our politics and our thinking, and to give our party and our country the new start that they deserve. It is time to get down to business. It is time to renew. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Kemi Badenoch there, the new leader of the Conservative Party, the new leader of the opposition. We can talk to our political editor, Beth Rigby, who joins us there live from where the result was announced. And Beth, she's got a big task ahead.
Yes, and you heard at the end of that speech where she said it's time to renew. That was the slogan of her entire campaign. It was a short speech, but it went to the point of what Kemi Badenoch has been arguing in this race. It's time to tell the truth, she said. She is, if you like, the more authentic of candidates. She knows what she thinks. She says what she thinks. It seems that party members have taken the gamble that she will cut through and take the fight to Labour in a way that they perhaps thought Robert Jenrick might not. And you heard in that speech there, she said it's time to tell the truth, to acknowledge the mistakes, to stand up for Conservative values, to renew and reinvent Conservative Party thinking, not over just 5 years, but 10, 20. That was the kind of scope and scale of how Badenoch was putting it. But there is literally no policy on the bones, if you like. She has not run this as a campaign in which she's talked about policy decisions she would make. It's more been about values and her character and her pitch for leadership. It has won out. But when you drill down into this result, it's not entirely comfortable. For a start, there's far fewer members voting than they were back in 2022 when they were picking a Prime Minister. 90,000 votes cast against about 140,000 in the Truss-Sunak runoff, and 72% turnout. So that means about 90,000 eligible members voted. Kemi Badenoch came in with 53,000 votes. That was 57% of the vote against about 43 for Robert Jenrick, the sort of division that we saw with Truss and Sunak. So it wasn't an emphatic victory. And that 53,000 votes she won, it's less than what Rishi Sunak lost with in 2022 when he lost out to Liz Truss. And the reason I'm giving you all these numbers is because it tells a story of a Conservative Party that has not emphatically backed this leader. 130,000 members. She's picked up about 53,000 of them, and it's a parliamentary party divided as well, with many MPs not wanting this as the runoff anyway. They actually wanted a number of them James Cleverly as a more mainstream candidate. Instead, they ended with 2 on the right. So that's the kind of internal politics, but also taking it to the country. It is going to be quite a task for Kemi Badenoch rebuilding this party, although when you talked to MPs and Conservative Party members here, they are cheered on by the fallout of the Labour budget, and that one poll, only one poll, but it showed for the first time in 3 years that the Conservative Party had edged ahead of Labour. And then the other thing to say about it is there has been discussion already about whether Kemi Badenoch will really be the one that will lead the party into the next general election. That has she got what it takes to carry the Conservative message to the wider country, or will she be someone that the Conservative Party like, but she doesn't rub along well with the wider public? It looks like the party, to try and kind of give her a bit more comfort in her position, have changed the rules in order that there's a higher threshold for how many MPs can issue a confidence vote. It had been 15% of the parliamentary party, but when you've only got 121 MPs, well, that isn't a big cohort of people that could trigger a leadership ballot. GB News reporting that Bob Blackman, the chair of the 22, has been on that channel telling them that he's changed the rules and now you need a third of members, MPs, to trigger a confidence vote. That's 40 MPs. So Kemi Badenoch could take some comfort in that. Look, the bigger picture here is they still have a mountain to climb. The worst parliamentary result in their history, just 121 MPs. Keir Starmer with a massive majority. But they think there's something to fight for. The Labour leadership is struggling at the moment. The budget has been controversial. And then that one poll lead. The question is whether Kemi Badenoch can put together a coalition of different bits of her party in that shadow cabinet and take the fight to Labour. I think many Conservatives would privately say to all of us, it is a gamble, but in the end, it was this woman who has more cut through, if you like, that won out. And it is the first ever black woman to lead a major political party in this country. That is a big moment in itself, and it's the third time that the Conservative Party have picked a woman to be their leader as opposed to a Labour Party who never have, and I'm sure that that will be talked about a lot in the coming days too.
Beth, thank you very much indeed. Beth Rigby there. Pretty interesting to hear about the reported move by the Conservative Party to raise the number of MPs that it takes to trigger a leadership contest, trying to shore up a bit of stability in the party. I mean, previously it was just about the same number of people who voted for James Cleverly last time, so you can see why they perhaps wanted to increase that number. And you know how ambitious MPs are, of course. Everyone's deciding who to back, partly because of who they thought should be the best leader, but perhaps also thinking about their personal ambitions as well. So it's always interesting to hear from those who backed the wrong horse, because following Kemi Badenoch's win, Beth caught up with Victoria Atkins to hear her thoughts about the new party leader. Here's what she had to say.
I know how hard Rob and the whole team worked on this. I think he did a fantastic job. He worked, for months now. He's been racing around the country, speaking to members, media, really holding himself out to be tested by everyone. And so, of course, I feel very disappointed for him and for his family and for his team. But what I do know is that we, as a Conservative family, now really want this to work. And so, huge congratulations to Kemi. She's got an amazing privilege to to lead our party. And I know that all of us will want to be supporting her in that effort, because not only do we as a Conservative family want our party to get back on track, but we also have an important job to do. As she said in her speech, we've got to hold this dreadful socialist government to account, and we know that we can do this. We've seen this week the impact of the budget on people's lives, whether they live in rural communities, whether they employ people or indeed employees, and so there's a real job of work for us to do.
You're currently Shadow Health Secretary. You were the Health Secretary. Do you hope to hold that portfolio?
Gosh, no, I'm in the hands of others now, but what I do know is that my personal commitment to both the health portfolio, but also, of course, to my wonderful constituency that re-elected me, these are the things that I will be focusing on. And I also think, whatever comes out of the wash over the next few days, we are back in the chamber on Monday with the budget debate, holding this socialist government to account on their tax hikes.
But you probably heard me run through the numbers a bit, and I hadn't had time yet to look at them properly, but it looks like Kemi Badenoch pulled in 53,000 votes from 130,000 members. It looks like 40,000 members didn't even vote. She got less votes as a winner than she did against Rishi Sunak losing to Liz Truss in 2022. This is not a united party, and this is not a great mandate. I put that to you.
Well, look, I mean, we'll go through the figures obviously later on, but what I do know is, everybody is willing Kemi on now. We want this to succeed. As I say, we've got to make it succeed, not just for us as Conservative members and activists, but also for the sake of the country. And Rishi Sunak handed a really great gift to his successor today, because today in the polls, the Conservatives are ahead of Labour.
One poll did put you ahead.
Absolutely.
First time in 3 years.
Absolutely. And this is after their socialist budget, where they will have been hoping that they were streets ahead of us all.
I have to say that the Labour would say it wasn't a socialist budget, because no one's there from Labour to make that point.
Well, no, I accept that. But from the perspective of employers who are facing massive wage increases for nothing.
Vicky, it seems to me that you are a Jenrick backer. Your man did not win, but you are here on Sky Live now after this result to say the party needs to put up, shut up, get behind Kemi and stop fighting. Is that how you feel?
Exactly right. And we are all willing Kemi and the whole of our party on to win. I genuinely think we've seen a terrible start to this Labour government, and the responsibility we bear is a very serious one. And I know there'll be lots of people wanting to help Kemi in budget.
Some of your colleagues, not least my fellow podcaster Ruth Davidson, doubts whether Kemi will even be the leader at the next election. She said the same about Jenrick, actually, who she voted for. Do you 100% hand on heart think that the leader now, Kemi, will lead the party into the next general election?
Yes, I do, because I know during this contest, each of the candidates were so very, very carefully tested, and all of them have got the message loud and clear from the party, from us as members of Parliament, but also from the public, that we need to get ourselves together, really, really take the fight to Labour, and to ensure that we're presenting a positive vision for our party and for our country. I didn't come into politics to oppose. I came into politics to do stuff, to create better lives for people, to help improve our public services, to help improve our nation's health and wealth. And so this is the challenge that Kemi and all of us face now, and I think it's a really exciting one.
Final question. Did you manage to see Rob Jenrick just afterwards? What did he say? Did you see him?
I didn't, because I had promised many of your colleagues to come and speak, and I wanted to keep my promises.
He must be really gutted, do you think?
Both he and Mikal, his wonderful wife, who are very dear friends of mine, they have worked their socks off, but also, and this doesn't always they don't always get the attention they deserve. The team of people behind Rob, these are actually quite a lot of younger people giving up their jobs temporarily to work on this campaign. They have given their life and soul to this, and so it is as much for them that I want to say thank you, as well as, of course, to Rob for standing.
And he will serve in shadow cabinet, do you think, if Kemi offers him a job? Well, she said she'd offer all the candidates a job.
Yeah, look, Rob is as committed to the Conservative Party healing and renewing as Kemi is, and indeed we all are. So I really think this is a fresh page now that we need to turn, and my enormous thanks to Rob, but to all the candidates for standing and all their teams that supported them.
Well, as you'd expect, there's been an awful lot of political reaction to the big news this morning that Kemi Badenoch is the new leader of the Conservative Party. We can take you through some of that now. The now former Conservative leader, Rishi Sunak, was among the first to congratulate Kemi Badenoch on her win. He said, "Congratulations to Kemi Badenoch on being elected Conservative Party leader. I know that she'll be a superb leader of our great party. She will renew our party, stand up for Conservative values and take the fight to Labour. Let's unite behind her." That key word there, unite behind her. Let's see how that goes. The former leader, Lord David Cameron, also posted on X. He said, "Many congratulations, Kemi Badenoch, on being elected leader of the Conservatives. As the last Conservative leader of the opposition, I know all too well that it can be one of the toughest jobs in British politics. It's now time for the party to renew and prove ourselves to the British people. Kemi will have my full support as she starts that crucial work. I also pay tribute to Rishi Sunak and thank him for his service to the party and to the country. He's been an exemplary leader in challenging times. I wish him well with all he goes on to do in the future." And perhaps one of the most important pieces of reaction, the one from the current Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who did congratulate the new Conservative leader. He said, "Congratulations, Kemi Badenoch, on becoming the Conservative Party's new leader. The first black leader of a Westminster party is a proud moment for our country. I look forward to working with you and your party in the interests of the British people. Keir Starmer there reacting to the person who's going to be facing across the floor of the House of Commons very soon. Let's chat to our panel and also to our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. I mean, look, one of the key things, I guess, is how is Labour going to deal with the new leader of the opposition? Do you think that Keir Starmer and his party are going to be relishing the chance of Kemi Badenoch, or do you think she's the one that they didn't want to win?
Well, it's funny that you just had a sort of very gracious message from Keir Starmer himself. At the same time, the Labour Party, working in tandem, have just put out their first attack message on social media.
I love it.
Asking whether or not Kemi Badenoch would take away extending maternity rights for women. Now, that goes to the heart of where I think it gets really interesting to look at the relationship between Labour and the new leader of the opposition. Because I think there's no doubt the reason that Tories elected her is they can see somebody who is going to give Keir Starmer a hard time at the dispatch box. She has a quick wit, she has an aggression, which is important in politics, to land a punch and to land blows, and the expectation is she will be able to do that. And that is what her party want her to do. But I don't think they're going to be overly worried in the Labour Party just at the moment from this perspective. Kemi Badenoch, by being a free-thinking, free-ranging, ideology-first politician, has, in effect, put everything on the table, every bit of spending. Her only known view, really, is that she thinks the state is too big and we've got to cut back. That allows the Labour Party, who have just done a spend budget, to point at the opposition and go, well, what would you cut? What would you tax? What tax cut would you, what would you cut that we are offering? And that is the fight that the Labour Party want to have. And so long as Kemi Badenoch puts everything on the table and says everything is up for review, the Conservative Party don't really have a case for the defence. They don't know whether they're going to squeeze health spending, keep health spending the same, increase health spending. They don't know whether they're going to cut maternity rights, keep them the same, or expand them. A years-long, rigorous review does leave the Tories a bit naked when it comes to the bear pit chamber. And whilst she might be good in the top position, it'll be interesting to see how, holding on while there is not very much substance works for them over 1, 2, 3 years.
Sam was just mentioning the attack ad that's just been put out by the Labour Party, and I think we can show you it now, hopefully, because I think, as Sam was saying, this does really go to the heart of how Labour will be dealing with Kemi Badenoch. They're saying the Labour government is extending maternity rights for women. Would Kemi Badenoch take them away? ? And then that headline there. I want to bring in Andrew Bowie here, because, look, Kemi Badenoch says, I was misquoted on maternity rights, but it does point to a bit of a problem with her, doesn't it? That she kind of half floats these ideas or thoughts, which is fine if you're having, a debate down the pub with people about what it is. But if you're leading the opposition, then it is reasonable for people to think, hang on a minute, is she questioning maternity rights? Is this something that is very, very important to many people in this country that could be on the table?
Yeah, look, I mean, one of the great things about Kemi is that she does think deeply about the issues, and she thinks very hard before she takes a firm position on something. I think that's to her credit, and it's something that we will have to get used to in this age of people expecting politics to work at the pace that we've become used to.
You could expect someone, to be fair, at 44 to have a considered view and a fixed view on whether maternity pay.
Well, she does, and having received maternity pay herself and being a working mother who's held down a job as a Secretary of State whilst having 3 children, I think she would say, if she was sitting here right now, that of course she supports maternity pay, and in no way would the Conservative Party seek to remove any of those hard-won rights and freedoms that women have gotten in this country over the past few decades. But as I said, she thinks very deeply about the issues that is put in front of her. She has said herself what she was talking about was the overweening bureaucracy and the cost of doing business in this country, and that's something that even the Labour Party seemed to acknowledge, well, at least up until this budget, was something that would have to be addressed if we were going to get growth and actually get companies growing, providing the jobs that we want to see in their local communities and indeed the country overall. That's what Kemi was speaking about. But look, I think we've just got to focus on, and to Sam's point, yes, this might be a bit of an uncomfortable few months for us as we begin the work of setting out the policy platforms on which we're going to be taking on the Labour Party. But But the fact is that we know where we are headed. We know that we think that this budget is bad for business and bad for the economy. We know that we want to see a reduction in the size of the state. And we know overall the direction that Kemi wants to take the Conservative Party in.
Okay.
Onto that will come the specific policies.
Anita, what's your take on this? She's a high-risk candidate, right? She's a high-risk person to have as leader of opposition.
Yes, and I think one of the fundamental challenges is that a lot of your job is media. You become a sort of, you're a comms person, a comms commentariat, because you can't do things in respect of being in government and pulling particular levers to demonstrate your values. So I think there is something that's going to be really important, which is that Kemi is someone who definitely thinks in those shades and those nuances, and it's a really fascinating, a very rich conversation if you get into one with her. But in the modern age, that's going to be a challenge. So how she manages to convey some of her really important and interesting thoughts in such a way that doesn't lead to people misconstruing or misunderstanding and delivering sort of easy, Labour sort of Twitter things. I mean, are they consequential? Not really. But nevertheless are distracting from the central things that she'll want to land.
Do you think she has to be, or do you think it's right that the position of leader of the opposition, is in effect a comms position? Is it not the case, or should it not be the case, that she as leader is a person who is, thinking those deep thoughts about policy
You have to tell people about them.
And the people around her are the people who can go out and sell that message when it's developed. I mean, Keir Starmer himself is far from a comms professional. I think most people would agree. So do you not think that maybe what we're seeing with Keir in Downing Street and with Kemi as leader of the opposition will be a different way of doing politics? And maybe that's a good thing, away from the high-octane politics we've become used to in the last 10 years.
Keir Starmer, I should say, did do quite a lot of interviews as leader of the opposition, right?
Yes, I don't think any of them are the reason why he's ended up with the majority that he has.
But I think Anita's point is that you have to sell it. You can't show through changing policy.
He also had years. He also had years in that position as leader of the opposition, coming in following Jeremy Corbyn leaving office about 4 years ago, to develop that policy platform. And as I said, we're at the beginning of that journey now.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, I think that she is going to be rightly strategic about the media opportunities she takes, which is the right thing, and to have something to say, which I think will add to her value. But I think there's a broader point. I actually don't think that there's going to be a kind of complete vacuum. I think the only two things you can do as opposition is oppose, right, and be really clear about where they see shortcomings. And I think that Kemi and the team will do that immediately and quite effectively. And the other thing is to tell people, the public, what you stand for and what you might do. And I think that second bit is where that media management and not getting derailed is going to be particularly important.
We're going to pause for a moment, but we'll have lots more still to come on Sky News, because coming up, we are going to be taking a deep dive into Kemi Badenoch's rise to become the new leader of the Conservative Party.
We're rolling. Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Trust in politics is at an all-time low. What's going wrong, and can we fix it? It's from Liz. She wants to know, why is there still no sign of the Labour Party electing a woman as leader?
It's sort of embarrassing. It takes a very strong man to be leader, but it takes an even stronger man to support a woman for leader.
If you want to be mean to politicians, crack on. The activists that go out and make elections happen, I kind of feel just don't be horrible to them. Be polite to them in the same way that they're polite to you.
Keir Starmer has got us into government with a big majority. He was completely clear before the election that he wasn't going to be able to do the two-child benefit policy, but I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't an early thing that comes along.
I went up to Gordon Brown and said, hello? No, yes, where is it? I said, found all these Tory candidates breaking land. Let me see it.
This is brilliant, brilliant.
Hello, welcome back to Westminster. Kemi Badenoch has been named as the new Conservative Party leader. She takes over from Rishi Sunak after a very long-fought leadership race. Let's take a moment now to look at her political career and analyse how she's risen through the Conservative ranks. My colleague Ali Fortescue has been taking a look.
Kemi, why is it that you're the only one that's not going to talk to the media?
Thank you so much for the interview.
She's never been a conventional politician. Taking on big names from the start, a campaign not shy of a fight.
I don't wish ill of her, I just wish her to shut up.
No, I will not shut up.
Now Kemi Badenoch has won the battle for the Tory crown.
Who do I want alongside me? Somebody who shies away from a fight or somebody who I have to occasionally restrain? I'll take the restraint.
Do you occasionally have to restrain her?
No, but I'm saying if that's your choice, I want somebody that really knows that they have to make the case and do it boldly.
Kemi Badenoch's path to politics was not an ordinary one. The daughter of a GP and a professor, she was born in Wimbledon but grew up in Nigeria, in West Africa. At 16, her father saved for the airfare that would take her back to the UK.
I worked at McDonald's when I was 16, but it wasn't working at McDonald's that made me working class.
Her claim that flipping burgers made her working class was ridiculed, but it was at that time, studying at Sussex University, that Kemi Badenoch's politics took shape, leading her to the Tory party in her early 20s.
People of this beautiful constituency.
And then Parliament in her 30s, where she quickly attracted attention.
As Woody Allen said about sex, if it's not messy, you're not doing it right.
I remember the first time that she had become a minister and was at the dispatch box, and it was a really head-turning moment. She appeared to speak with great clarity, this sort of almost from-the-heart conviction. She has a reputation of being a bit gruff, sometimes grumpy, sometimes rude to colleagues. You can't do that if you are the leader. You need to bring colleagues along with you.
Do you think that reputation's fair?
It is her style is to be very direct, and some people won't like that.
Self-proclaimed anti-woke, many first noticed her introducing Theresa May's conference speech.
Me, Kemi, a girl from Nigeria.
Are we heading for a coronavirus crash, Chancellor?
And under Boris Johnson, she rose to the Treasury. And then the Cabinet as International Trade Secretary.
It's time to tell the truth.
And when the race came to replace Liz Truss, she beat the odds and finished fourth.
Are you pleased with your new job, Kemi Badenoch?
Badenoch.
Never afraid to speak her mind, never far from a headline.
I was...
Order. Who do you think you're speaking to, Secretary of State?
On policy, she hasn't given much away. Even so, it was a characteristically eventful leadership campaign.
I think maternity pay is a good thing. I don't think it's excessive.
Accused of being gaffe-prone, once she made it to the membership, the direction of travel was clear.
Some people say, I like a fight. I can't imagine where they got that idea.
Hers has been a remarkable journey. Kemi Badenoch makes history as the first black woman to lead the Conservatives. The long-time favourite has convinced the party. Now the bigger job of persuading the public. Ali Fortescue, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, it's been interesting to see how Labour has responded to the news that Kemi Badenoch is the new leader of the opposition. A very gracious tweet from Keir Starmer, and then the attack ad, of course, immediately highlighting her so-called position on maternity pay. But we have also got some on-camera reaction from the Labour Party chair, Ellie Reeves. She was speaking in the last half hour.
We've spent the last 4 months with the Conservatives, rather than take any kind of responsibility for the mess that they've left the country in after 14 years of Conservative government, rather than take responsibility, they've just been talking to each other with more sort of division and chaos and infighting as this leadership election has played out.
But it being Kemi rather than Robert Jenrick, who would you have preferred? What's your reaction to it being Kemi Badenoch?
Well, look, I'm proud that she's the first black woman to lead a political party in Westminster. But Kemi was part of the chaos of the last 14 years, serving in various roles. And you think about her leadership campaign, where she made some pretty negative comments about autistic children. She said that maternity pay was excessive, the national minimum wage was harmful. I'm quite worried about what that means, actually. Is she going to get rid of, is their policy going to be to get rid of maternity pay? Would they scrap the minimum wage? These are all things that would need to be answered.
Well, we can bring in our panel, the Conservative MP Andrew Bowie, who supported Kemi Badenoch, and Anita Berting, the former Conservative Party Special Advisor. Do you think, Anita, that Labour's going to be kind of licking their lips at the prospect of Kemi Badenoch as a leader?
I think there is an unpredictability to Kemi, which I think will prompt a degree of caution. Of course, you need that, because certainly whether it's at the dispatch box or the kind of issues that she might kind of punch bruises on in terms of the Labour Party or her style, and the kind of broad, I think, some degree of media interest in her as a kind of new leader of the opposition. I think there are avenues for Kemi to explore, which I think could make life more challenging than it has been over the past 4 months with Rishi Sunak as someone who just lost an election. But broadly, I think that point around, when you're government, you have the blue pulpit, you have the ability to really define and set the agenda of a lot of these questions. And the fact that there's going to need to be a period of adjusting and the Conservatives coming up with their own solutions to these policy challenges means that I'm certainly not someone who thinks the road ahead is easy for the Conservative Party.
Yeah, it's unlikely to be an easy road, I guess, given the extent of the defeat. I mean, I'm looking at a similar defeat back in '97. It took you 4 leaders to get back into power. Andrew, how confident are you that Kemi Badenoch's going to be the one leading you back into power this time?
Yeah, look, I am confident, actually. I think that she's got all the qualities needed for us to take the fight for the Labour Party and win. Interestingly, Ellie Reeves there saying how proud she was that the first black person to lead a major political party in the United Kingdom. Yes, that's true. No mention of the fact that she's the 4th female leader that the Conservative Party have had to the Labour Party's 0 thus far. So I think it's going to be great fun. I'm really excited about Kemi being leader. I think there is an unpredictability about what she's going to bring to the dispatch box when she goes up against Keir Starmer, the issues that she's going to take the Labour Party on, the way that she's going to connect and cut through to the British people. I'm really excited about it.
It's been great to have you both on the programme. Keep your phone on, because obviously you're early back and coming back. There's going to be a few shadow cabinet jobs going spare, I reckon, in the next few hours and days. So thank you very much. Good to have you on the programme. You're watching Sky News. Coming up, we'll have all the latest reaction to Kemi Badenoch being chosen as the new Conservative Party leader. Hello, welcome back to Westminster, where Kemi Badenoch has been elected as the new Conservative Party leader. Well, I had the opportunity to catch up with her earlier in the week. It was a pretty wide-ranging, actually quite fascinating discussion, but there was one question that I really wanted to put to her, and it is worth listening to the answer. I'm not always completely clear. Do you want to be Prime Minister?
So what I want to do is make the country more conservative. And by that I mean, policies that will help deliver better growth, just a better life for everyone. And I think having a Conservative government is the best way to do that. And I think that right now I have the best agenda to lead my party and to get us there.
But do you want to be Prime Minister? I mean, honestly, if you ask most MPs, they would all be like, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Do you want to be Prime Minister?
Well, I don't think it's about wanting to be Prime Minister. I think it's not an award. It's not like winning a competition. It's actually a very serious job that requires a lot of sacrifice. It changes your life forever. You can't just go back and work in a normal job afterwards. It changes the life of your family. So I'm very, very wary of saying, oh, I want to be Prime Minister, I want to be in charge. I think that people need to understand what is the service that you're providing, rather than how can we help you fulfill a personal ambition. For me, the ambition is about the country, not myself.
Are you worried about some of those potential sacrifices, though?
Well, I've thought about them very carefully, and also with my family as well. So I am very well aware of how life could change for the worse in many circumstances. But I also worry even more about the direction of the country and what will happen unless we can turn things around.
So you think your personal life could change for the worse then if you are Prime Minister?
I think that if you look at the previous Prime Ministers, Margaret Thatcher, Tony Blair, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, whoever, there's actually quite a lot of animosity towards politicians and prime ministers. People blame them for things that have gone wrong, even when it's not necessarily anything to do with them. And I think that you harbour that, you have to carry the weight of things happening on your watch. It's a lot of responsibility. And I think people should not go into it thinking it's going to be a lark or a game. It's a very serious thing. But right now, what I'm campaigning for is to be leader of my party and be leader of the opposition. That is what the public has said Conservatives should do right now.
Right, let's get some reaction now from the Conservative MP, Sir John Hayes, who supported Robert Jenrick. Get your name right, apologies. What kind of a leader do you think Kemi Badenoch is going to be? You, of course, backed her rival.
Well, I hope she's a successful one. Her task now is to pull the party together, and our task is to help her do that. And so I wish her every success. I'm a loyal Conservative Member of Parliament. I want my party to prosper and I want them to defeat the Labour Party. Just
listening to what you said, I said, what kind of leader do you think she'll be? And you said, I hope she'll be a successful one. That doesn't sound like, you're a ringing endorsement. You're not saying you think she is going to be a successful one.
Well, look, Kemi's won after a hard-fought campaign, and of course I acknowledge that and congratulate her on her victory.
Do you think she'll be a good leader?
Extremely unreasonable not to do so, I think. Robert fought a really good campaign, and she was very generous and said she sees him having a big role to play, a big part to play now and in the future. And I thought that was a generous remark, which suggests she does want to build a successful and unified team.
Do you think she's going to be a good leader?
I'm sure she will be a good leader because she has got the endorsement of the party. I think the goodwill of members of Parliament. And she faces an extremely unpopular Labour government. So I think there's every prospect that she will be successful, as I just said.
They fought two very different campaigns. Robert Jenrick was very busy. He felt like he was in the breakfast studio at Sky News basically every morning. Kemi Badenoch was much more difficult to pin down. Do you think Robert Jenrick fought the better campaign?
I thought Robert Jenrick fought an extremely energetic campaign and measured in the terms you're describing. Clearly, you're telling me he did more. I certainly saw him at close quarters. I already admired Robert. My admiration for him grew. And it's very interesting, because you think at the beginning of this campaign, Robert Jenrick was seen as a rank outsider, if you go back earlier this year. And even when the process itself started, people didn't expect him to get to the last two, to make the cut. So he's grown, hasn't he? And he's now a major national figure.
I've got to ask, because you're a bit of a, I guess, a kind of veteran of machinations within the Conservative Party. I think that's kind of fair to say. You know, you're kind of close to Suella Braverman, you're on the right of your party.
Yeah.
It feels to me like in the last week or so, some of the more centre-of-ground Conservatives pulled in behind Kemi Badenoch. Some of them telling me that it's because they felt that Robert Jenrick had been, in their words, captured by the right of the party. So people like you. What would you say to that?
Well, he had a broad base of support. I mean, Vicky Atkins is a friend of mine, and Robert's is not known for being on the right of the party and backed Robert very strongly. John Lemon, you know, a Scottish colleague, again, backed Robert Agar, another friend. So he had a broad level of support. But you're right, his programme was very clear on immigration and ECHR. I think that chimes with a lot of people in the party, not just on the right.
John, as a friend, would you now tell Robert Jenrick to abandon forever his hopes of leading the Conservative Party?
I've learnt in politics, Sam, that everything's fairly ephemeral. You know, I was here when Tony Blair was commanded all he surveyed, do you remember? And you thought it would go on forever. And then David and George, I was close to David Cameron, as you know, I worked closely with him. You couldn't believe that wouldn't last forever. So in politics, things do change. But for the time being, we need to back Kemi Badenoch and we need to win an election. And that's what I'm focused on doing.
But everybody in the Conservative Party will have just heard you say, for the time being. What message do you think that sends about party unity, the likelihood of your wing rowing in behind Kemi properly and truly, as opposed to paying lip service for a few months before you spot another attempt to go after her again?
That wasn't the implication of what I said. What I said was, we are now in a circumstance where we've elected a leader through a fair and free process. She has the support of the party. She now needs to unify the party, deserves the support of MPs. And our focus must be fighting the Labour government. So, absolutely, I'm committed to that. And that does mean backing our new leader, of course.
There's been a report that the threshold for the number of MPs on the Conservative benches who would be needed to put in a letter of no confidence and trigger a leadership contest has been increased. Do you think that's a good thing, or do you think that it means, I guess, you're taking away some democracy from...
Well, that's a matter for the party. And, you know, there is a good argument for having a bar which needs to be reached. Heaven forbid that we should have that circumstance anyway. We've got a new leader. Let's make that work. You know, we don't want to be debating whether we want a different leader and a different process and a new election. We've just had one. We've settled that matter, and let's get behind the leader, unify and win.
And what do you want to see Kemi Badenoch do in order to bring the party together? What would be like the first policy she could announce, or the first big thing she could do to bring people like you, but someone else on board?
Well, clearly, I've already said that part of our agenda will be deconstructing the overtures of the Labour government. That doesn't seem to be particularly hard at the moment, but nonetheless, it needs to be done. We need to expose that further. And then getting the people who didn't vote last time, the people who stayed at home, back on side, enthusing them, inspiring them to vote Conservative again. And then, of course, the third thing, winning back voters who went to the Liberal Democrats or Reform. Now, all of those will be, I would imagine, in her in tray, high up her list of priorities.
How about the ECHR?
Yeah, I'm in favour of leaving it. And why wouldn't...
Would you like her to adopt that policy?
I hope she will. She hasn't said she won't, don't forget.
No, exactly. That's what I'm asking. Do you think she should adopt it?
Kemi has said she wants to look at that closely and make a plan. Robert said he was going to do it, but she didn't rule it out. And, clearly that debate will have to take place in the party. But I'm of the view that we do need to leave in order to take back control, particularly of our borders.
Wouldn't necessarily help you win back those Lib Dem voters, though, would it?
Actually, if you look at the analysis, quite a lot of people who voted Lib Dem at this election were Brexiteers. So a significant number had already voted to take back control.
OK, thank you both very much indeed. Great to have you on the programme, Sir John.
Thank you.
There. You're watching Sky News. Coming up, we'll have all the latest reaction to Kemi Badenoch being chosen as the new Conservative Party leader.
Are you ready to make your voices heard?
As America votes,
Win, 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 win.
Get ready for an election night like no other. Join our team stateside
as we get close to the action
and bring you the results as they arrive.
with full reaction and comprehensive analysis guiding you through the night.
In an election which could have huge consequences around the world.
America Votes, Election Night, live.
Get the full story first on Sky News.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
An enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States. It's a border where they're not welcome, yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away. They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We're being crushed.
Free from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first.
Well, hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
Hello, welcome back to Westminster, where Kemi Badenoch this morning was elected as Conservative Party leader. Let's get a final word from our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. Sam, I feel like it is worth, firstly, reflecting on Kemi Badenoch as leader, but then secondly, to pick up on the interview that we've just had with Sir John Hayes, which I think tells us an awful lot about the direction of the Conservative Party. But firstly, Kemi Badenoch, first black leader of a major political party, leads the opposition. She has got an enormous task ahead of her, trying to unite the Conservative Party and then to try and get the electorate to give them another chance.
What the 130,000 Conservative Party members have done today is to choose a big figure over somebody who was prepared to tell them what they wanted to hear on some policy issues. They have chosen Kemi Badenoch as somebody who is going to grab attention, who is going to be worth listening to, who, yes, will be a controversialist at points, but also will say the unsayable, they hope, in the views of the Conservative membership, rather than somebody who is offering up the kind of things that perhaps you might have expected the Tory right, which often wins these contests, to like. But in the end, there was a judgment that she's more likely to be able to be selling the Conservative Party after its devastating defeat to the rest of the country.
Yeah, it's going to be a hard task selling the party after the defeat. And I have to say, in the last kind of 15 minutes or so, I felt that the task of uniting the Conservative Party is also going to be a pretty tall one. Sir John Hayes, we've just spoken to, it's worth just explaining who he is, because he's been a big figure on the Conservative right, a kind of behind-the-scenes fixer for many years. He's a guy who, you know, has got influence over that wing of the party. And he told us that, yes, you know, she's going to be leader, I think, you know, for the time being. I asked him 3 times if he thought Kemi Badenoch would be a good leader, and he finally kind of got there. It didn't seem like a ringing endorsement, I've got to be honest.
This is one of the issues we have seen for really since the Brexit referendum of 2016, a Conservative Party absolutely riven by internal backbiting and factional fighting. And that was true when Theresa May was leader, she got ousted, and it was true when Rishi Sunak, the last leader, was ousted and defeated in the general election campaign. That was off the back of, you know, Robert Jenrick resigning, of Suella Braverman resigning, of a battle between the left and the right. The question is, can Kemi Badenoch be the person that unites everybody? And I think it's fair to say we know from talking to people that she is still controversial with a slice of the right, often the same slice of the right, that has agitated against previous leadership. And, you know, we're looking in the direction of the man who's no longer sitting on the other side of the desk, but he is somebody who has played his part in calling time on successive Tory leaders. And when I asked, would you tell Robert Jenrick to put his leadership ambitions aside forever, answer came there none. And his throwaway remark, people should get behind Kemi Badenoch for the time being, and his sort of painful eventual answer to you about whether or not she'd be a good leader. Yes, I think he got there in the end, but it took you a lot of questioning before he would allow the words to come out of his mouth. Tells you a bit about the state of the Conservative Party at the end of this race. I'm not sure that reflects a vast majority, but she needs to get things right because there will be people there not too upset if she fails.
One of them, of course, perhaps in the studio not so long ago. Sam Coates, thank you very much indeed. Robert Jenrick has tweeted to say congratulations to Kemi Badenoch. Thank you to everyone who supported my vision for a Conservative Party rooted in the common ground of British politics. It's now time for the Conservatives to unite behind Kemi and take the fight to this disastrous Labour government. Will they do that? We'll find out in the days and months ahead. But this woman, the woman of the moment, Kemi Badenoch, the new leader of the opposition.